Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brett Malakote, Associate Superintendent at SCOE. Really just glad you're all here today. We're approaching a full room. I know we'll have a few more coming in as folks are transitioning from one meeting to the next. And I'm going to be a little quicker than usual on my opening slides today because I got a video that came up for me today that I feel like I just want to share with all of you. It'll be maybe like we'll have two warm welcomes today, maybe is kind of the way this will roll out a little bit. But Patrick, thanks for helping to create a slide and an opportunity for what I think is a really pretty amazing little video to share with all of you. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Here's our vision, mission, and outcomes slide. We do spend some time on this, I think, at every meeting. I'll go through it quick today. I think we've also reworked our graphics on this slide, and it looks really great. Just so you know, too, if you are running meetings or community of practice meetings and you want to take any part of this community of practice to use exactly the way we've done it or shared it, feel free to do that or to make it your own as well. And so here's I love the kind of the setup of this, but our vision is to envision a future where every child and youth in California is celebrated, nurtured, and supported by caring adults at home and at school. If we could get that, boy, we'd go a long way towards a lot of different things in our society right now, I think. So that's a great vision. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Our objectives, these remain the same from meeting to meeting, are mostly the same. We're going to reflect on the work to date. We're going to empower community voices, including all of yours, and we'll have opportunities for community of practice kinds of activities, right? Like PLC sorts of opportunities for us to learn, to network, to share with one another, and just get better at the work that we're all trying to do. We'll engage in activities to foster collaboration and learning. We'll provide insight on technical assistance and ways to support administration of the capacity grants. Our agenda is simple. We'll have a welcome, we'll have peer learning and discussion, and we'll have an intentional close. Housekeeping, I did manage to get this done before I asked you to do it today, but if you want to update your name to include your county office or your organization, that would be fantastic. And just a reminder, and I think you probably all saw this as you were coming in, but we are recording the meeting today just so you can come back to it later, or if somebody can't join us today, they'll have access to it too. And we can go to the next slide. All right. So um, I was I'm a geek on NASA and all things space. And were any of you kind of tracking what was going on with the astronauts and Artemis? I mean, it was a feel-good story with some suspense built in a time when there's not a lot of feel-good stories, it feels like right now. And this was just, I thought was amazing. There's a 3-minute clip that I selected for all of us to just kind of reflect on today. And I think this is, if I had it right, it starts at, for all of you, if you want to do this too, it starts at 20 minutes and 30 seconds or 35 seconds, and it ends at 23:40. So it's almost exactly 3 minutes. And just take a moment to listen and reflect on what's being said here. So I'll let you take what you want to from that. For me, that's just an amazing 3-minute video that speaks to an experience of four people who had an experience most of us will never be able to have, but reflected in that kind of way. And I love how he talked about that they're these are like probably some of the most highly trained scientists and pilots and engineers and in the world, right? Like these would be the top of their classes in the science that they were all engaging in. And yet they chose to close out their reflections with joy and love. And to me, that is just so incredibly cool and awe-inspiring. And at SCOE, we're big SEL geeks here. And if when he talked about joy, joy is one of the things, that's one of the tenets that gets built into the five core competencies, right? Like joy is a big, big part of that. And we've partnered with the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley, and they've done some really like some deep study on joy. And so I just put one of the articles in the chat for you all to reference if you want to, um, where they're talking about the research that they've done around the importance of joy. And so you'll see that in the chat. Hope you enjoyed the video. Again, that goes from 2035 to 2340 if you're interested in using it as a warm welcome in the work that you're doing. But just couldn't help myself. Had to put that in there, knowing we had a packed agenda. And so thanks everybody with bearing with me for a minute or two there as we all looked at that together. Hope you enjoyed it. Let's have a great COP. These are always my favorite days of the month, and can't wait to engage with all of you for the next couple of hours.
Hey, thanks so much, Brent. That was amazing. So appreciate you sharing with us something that really brought you joy. It feels really sweet to kind of get that connection as well and to hear from them. So inspiring. So incredibly inspiring. Yeah, hopefully all of you have heard, but today we're mixing up our community practice a little bit. And we'll talk a little bit more details after the keynote presentation, but to give you a little bit of a framing at the top, we've got an amazing keynote presentation for you today, which we're super excited for. And then after that, we'll do some framing of our breakout rooms, which are also going to be very different today. And then we'll take a break, and then we'll do our breakout rooms where we have amazing leaders from across the state, LEAs who are truly doing transformational things around tier one supports and universal supports in their district that we're so excited to have all of you learn from. And so we'll have five breakout rooms with five leaders across the state. And each one of those rooms will be the LEA as well as a representative from their COE as well. So super excited for that. And like I said, after the keynote presentation, we'll hear more about those breakout rooms and that offering. But yeah, just so incredibly excited for today. So without further ado, I'm excited to introduce you to Gretchen Livesley. She is a director of partner impact at the Center for Whole Child Education. At that center, Gretchen collaborates with educators at all levels, state, county, district, network, school, and classroom, to build stakeholder capacity to drive equitable whole child thriving. Through her 30 years of service in education, Gretchen has been a high school English and filmmaking teacher, a curriculum writer, an instructional coach, a small school founder, and a leader at both the school and district levels. And on a personal note, she's hilarious. We did like a prep meeting last week, I believe, and I was laughing so hard I had to like check to see if my cubicle mates were in a Zoom meeting too because I was like, I kept laughing. She is hilarious and so sweet, so compassionate. As we were kind of going through the slide deck to prep last week, I could just feel how these are not just words. This is not just knowledge that she's gained. It's also something that she lives. So just so incredibly excited to introduce all of you to Gretchen.
Ooh, no pressure to be funny or anything, but I'll give it a go. We'll see how it goes. We can move off my grandma picture right now. I really feel like I look like a grandma there. I'm going to be talking to you today about how to create the conditions for learning, and we actually just heard three amazing conditions: gratitude, joy, and love. Those are some amazing conditions. And I would say if astronauts are not on the joy train, they're going to have a very hard time accessing the really important technical information they need to guide their rockets. So we'll get back to that though. So next slide. Just a little bit more about me. You heard my little biography. I was a classroom teacher for 17 years, loved teaching English and filmmaking. After I adopted a camera, I could never think about how to do English teaching without one in my hand or without one in the hands of my kids. I currently live near Santa Cruz. I go to the beach every day with my crazy dogs, Nugget and Tulip, who are there on the beach. Luckily, they are at the beach right now and not harassing me while I'm trying to do this presentation. I'm a new grandmother. That's my grandson Owen in my arms there. I am learning so much more about development now that I have this tiny baby in my life. Like, was I a parent before? Watching my daughter attach to this young human, my attachment, it's been really incredible. All right, a couple more words about me and the work that I did on the next slide. This is my small school that I founded in San Lorenzo, California. It's on the campus of San Lorenzo High School. It's called Bay Area Digital Arts. And the reason that I am showing this to you, first of all, doesn't it look gorgeous? We had an amazing CTE facilities grant that we won. The first thing we wanted students to feel when they walked in the door was, oh, this place is legit, right? I signed up to do a digital arts program, and by golly, I'm going to get that. So we had all this beautiful technology in our hands, but the way that we chose to work with our kids, and again, it was a small learning community, so we had about 100 kids per grade level when we first started. We took the whole first 2 weeks of school just to do field work. We did ropes courses. We got to know our students deeply so that when they entered this space where there was a lot of expensive equipment, they understood that they were part of a community that valued them, that valued their work, and it just made the whole thing run more smoothly. We didn't understand the science behind that yet, which I'm going to get to today, but that's my entry point to this kind of work. Okay, next slide. We're going to start off with a little getting to know each other activity, but we're going to ground it in a little video that's called Every Opportunity. Some of you may have seen this. I'm going to ask you this time when you watch it, if it is not the first time, to really consider which of these scenarios you most often see in the schools and the districts that you support when you are visiting them. All right, roll video.
Hey, Mr. Q.
Did you see that? Why would somebody do that?
Please go into the classroom, no talking, quietly.
Hey, Miss Merida. How you doing?
We need you inside.
How do you think that makes us feel?
I forgot my number.
What's your name?
Jordan
What's your last name?
Carter.
All right. Go ahead.
School is hard enough.
Come on in, sit down quietly at your desks, and begin writing.
This kind of stuff just makes it harder.
I said quietly, please. Who's talking? Is it you, Sophie? Don't let it be you.
Don't believe me?
Sophie.
Please just watch.
I'm not up here for me, I'm up here for you. Pay attention, okay? Now somebody answer me. Somebody needs to answer me really fast.
Every time we're ignored or yelled at or silenced, a teacher takes away what's possible.
No horseplay, no running, and especially no talking.
Moment by moment.
Miss McGarity, your student's behavior yesterday in the lunchroom, it was terrible. Next time, silent lunch.
Did you hear that? Stay in line and catch a bubble. I'm not playing.
If this is education, we're in trouble.
Bye, Miss McGarity.
Frederick Douglass said, once you learn to read, you'll be forever free. The way it is now, 2 of the 3 of us will never be able to really read. It doesn't have to be this way.
Hey, Jordan. How you doing?
Good.
Good.
Everyone we meet throughout our day can make a difference.
I've been waiting for you to arrive.
All the difference.
Good, how are you? Great. Hi, Jordan. Bye, Jason.
Good morning, Jordan.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Good.
Go ahead and put your number in.
Talk with
I
us,
don't know my number.
not at us.
That's okay. I'll look it up for you. Go ahead, sweetheart.
Okay.
All right. Have a
Teach
good
us what we need to know.
Good morning.
That's how we get smarter.
Well, good morning, Sophie, Janicia, and Jordan.
And when you talk with us and teach us, give us bigger and bigger words.
Now what I'd like you to do, children, is turn around and converse with your neighbor and discuss where the mother might have gone.
Words that we can use to read and understand.
She is prey for eagles, so she hunts at night.
And that will take us places we can never reach without you.
Remember, we're entering the learning zone. Now, how can we show our respect to the children and teachers who are working?
We can walk quietly.
Yes. Okay, kids, so what I'd like you to do is continue writing your narrative, documenting your emotions if you were the baby owl and your mother abandoned you in the nest.
What can you do? Learn all that you can so that you can challenge us to be our best.
You would have stayed and assisted them in whatever they needed.
Share yourself with us and show us how to share ourselves with others. Give us courage. Give us compassion. Help us find our own voices so we can become who we are meant to be.
Why would you want to silence us?
Okay, so you know the prompt. What stood out? Which scenario do you most often see in your schools? They're being dropped directly into the chat. Yay! And what impact does this have, not just on student well-being, but also learning? I hope you noticed that that was not created by an SEL program. That was created by a reading program. So you can kind of take that in as well. So we're going to go into random breakouts. You're going to have a chance to chat with a couple of people about these questions, and then we'll see you on the other side. All right. I hope you had your seatbelts on when you came rushing back and that nobody was cut off mid-sentence. If you were, I apologize. That does happen with these sometimes. So I hope you had a good conversation with your little breakout group. One thing I want to point out, right, is that that's not just a video about Jordan. That is a video about all of the many different decisions that adults make in the educational context every day that can either open up a child's nervous system and allow them to learn, or it can do the opposite and close it down. And when we don't have joy and belonging and trust and love in our educational environments, it's really hard for folks to learn. And that's why that reading center created that video. Very easy to find, but I will also make sure that I send a link along so that you can find that if you'd like. So the one thing I want you to keep in mind as I am going to embark on my keynote now, and my timer keeps resetting and I don't exactly know why, but I'll go next slide, please, while I'm getting it ready, is that the kids that we serve have boundless potential, and that the conditions that help each and every one of them to thrive can be intentionally cultivated. And you all are doing this all the time with your capacity grants, with the integrated supports you are providing, with the way you are helping districts and schools figure out how to best leverage their funding to make sure every child gets their support. You're already doing this. My point today is to give you some extra language and some science grounding so that you have other ways to talk about the work that you are doing. So next slide, again, setting you up. We're going to talk today about how our brains work. And it's not just all of our learners' brains, it's all of our brains. We all have brains that we're carrying around. This is also known as the science of learning and development. And I want to pause for a minute and next slide to introduce you, not introduce you. You've seen this before. These are the guiding principles for equitable whole child design, which I'm going to come back to at the end of my talk. So I wanted to kind of bookend this and start with it as well. So about 10, 12 years ago, a diverse group of educators and researchers and scientists formed what was called the Alliance for the Science of Learning and Development, now called the SOLD Alliance. It was comprised of my founder of the Center for Whole Child Education, Pam Cantor, also Linda Darling Hammond from LPI. There were a bunch of folks from CASEL there, from all kinds of national initiatives. And what Linda Darling Hammond talked about as the aim of that group was this. If the purpose of education is the equitable, holistic development of each young person, scientific knowledge from diverse fields can be used to redesign policies, practices, to create settings across the learning and development ecosystem that unleash the potential for each and every learner. All right, and that's what they did. They scanned all of these different sciences, neuroscience, science of development, education research, etc. And they came up with these guiding principles for whole child design, which I'm sure you've seen before, but if you haven't, you've probably seen another circle. I don't know why we always use circles, but we do, graphic that describes what those equitable principles are. And they will not be unfamiliar to you. Positive developmental relationships, environments filled with safety and belonging, rich learning experiences and knowledge development, development of skills, habits, mindsets, and then finally, integrated support systems. So, and all of this, of course, leads to that healthy development, learning, and thriving. So at the Center for Whole Child Education, next slide, what we do is really focus on some of the very basic science principles that underlie those equitable principles for whole child design. These are the 5. I'm going to talk about the first 3 today because I have 30 minutes with you. If you would like to learn about all of them, you can hit that QR code. That's going to take you directly into our toolbox. We have an online toolbox that's filled with resources. I hope that you will take a peek in there at some point. Okay, let's hit it with the first one. So we have over 20,000 genes, but fewer than 10% of them are ever expressed. What makes up the reason? How does that happen? It's actually our environment, our experiences, and the people around us. And that's what we mean by, next slide, bidirectionality. We all come into this world with a set of genomes, genes, DNA, and that DNA interacts through the world that is around us. There's this ongoing dynamic interaction between nature and nurture that drives all of our development. Next slide. What's important about that, right? And you may have heard this spoken in different words. We say the brain is malleable. People talk about neuroplasticity, right? The fact that we change and our brain changes in response to the context that we find ourselves in is the way that we develop. Next slide. So the malleable nature of development, we often say, and I flip this for today, is a vulnerability. You've talked about childhood trauma, ACE scores, etc. But what I want to suggest to you today, and I know all of you probably already know this, is that the neuroplasticity of our brains also creates an opportunity depending on the context that we create for our learners. Development isn't a fixed trajectory, right? The brain is malleable, and that is what we need to attune to as we are creating these environments. We now have, there's a little extra something that I just learned, as a matter of fact, today. I read a Substack by my founder, Pam Cantor, where she is talking about the fact that the brain doesn't just change over time. After a brain has experienced trauma, there's actually an opportunity for healing, right? The brain can heal from trauma. The neurons that get pruned back because of chronic stress can actually regrow. And that's driven by a protein that's called BDNF. And I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes because this is hot off the press for you guys today. It's called brain-derived neurotropic factor, all right, which researchers are calling miracle grow for the brain. The stress response patterns that get dysregulated come back into balance when this protein is released. So how does that happen? Let's go next slide. We're gonna sit for a minute on, oh, sorry, that was supposed to be brain gets some healing from context. Check out that context. Excellent. All right, trauma. What happens when we experience a traumatic or stressful event? Cortisol floods our brains and our bodies. And what cortisol does, next slide, is it affects our brain's learning systems. So I want you to we're going to pause for a moment, and I want you to remember a time when something stressful happened to you, but you still had to get your work done. How did that feel? And how was your work impacted? Just take a moment to think about that. Okay, next slide. Does anybody want to drop something in the chat right now? We could also do that. How did it make you feel? Nope, go back. That's perfect. All right. You can think about that and drop it in the chat for a moment. Thank you, Stenia. Nervous. Yes. Impossible to focus. Yes. Okay, go ahead and go to the next slide. All of these things that you're talking about is actually a neurobiological process. When our amygdalas are triggered, that's the alarm system in our brain, they actually suppress the other learning centers in our brains. The hippocampus, where memories are stored and where we do our best learning, and our prefrontal cortex, which allows us to focus, to be organized, to think about what we're going to do next. Those things can't happen when we are on high alert. When we're on high alert, we are looking for safety. We are trying to make sure that we are going to be okay, and we are not open to learning. Over time, this kind of ongoing stress can actually inhibit and make it almost impossible for learners to come into a space with their learning brains. All right, next slide. However, we talked about malleability in the brain. When we can change the context and instead fill it with, let's just go back to the astronauts, gratitude, trust, what else did you say? Love, joy. There we go. I managed to get it. I threw an extra one in there. When those things are happening, oxytocin is flowing through our brain. You have maybe heard of oxytocin by its other name, the love hormone. Oxytocin suppresses cortisol. Next slide, please. But that's not all it does. This new research that I was reading today tells us that oxytocin, while it does suppress cortisol, also acts as the spark to turn on that brain-derived neurotropic factor. And when that happens, that's when the healing begins to happen. So when we are filling our space with oxytocin, with joy, with love, with belonging, with actually seeing each other and caring about each other, we are in fact setting ourselves up to be learners, to be our best selves, to have control of our prefrontal cortex. I'm really falling in love with this brain-derived neurotropic factor, I have to say, today. We just met today, and I'm already happy that we've met. Okay, next slide. So here's the brain again, without the stress there, right? And this is when the brain is working best. Everything's in balance. The amygdala might be a little bit aroused, right? But that's okay. It allows us to pay attention, to lean in, to really be able to reach back into our hippocampuses and pull, I think it's actually hippocampi, and pull forward the memories that we need, the learning that we need to get through the tasks that we are working on right now. Okay, next slide. All right, so here we are again, right? These relationships, the relationships, for instance, that I took in my little school 2 weeks to set up before we actually began to do the real learning in our space, set our students' brains up for success. It's not a nice to have, it's an unlocking and unleashing of student potential. Okay, next slide. Now that we've been talking about learning, I also want to be sure that I mention, right, that learning is integrated. And I'm preaching to the choir right now because all of you know this. I meant to say at the very beginning, a lot of you know this already. You live this every day. You are people who are thinking about the mental status, the physical healthiness, the way that learners are set up and supported to learn. So this isn't new. Again, I'm just trying to give you a little different language to talk about it, perhaps. So what we mean when we say learning is integrated is that there's not a social and emotional part of the brain and a cognitive academic part of the brain. Those things happen simultaneously. And we're going to watch a quick little video by Mary Helen Imordano-Yang, who's at USC in the Center for Affective Neuroscience, Learning Education Development. I've also put in, I just want to shout out the SEL circle here. We have all the circle graphics. Another one here, right, where you will see all of those echoes. So what Mary Helen Emerjano Yang says is that emotional processes are structurally and functionally intertwined. Like, think about the neurons in your brain and the way they get more complicated. They're intertwined with and often the same as the cognitive capacities required for learning. When she first said this, she was really trying to challenge those folks who were saying there's not enough time in the day for us to be worrying about all that social and emotional stuff. We have to get down to the real learning. And she was like, no, no, no. You can't have one without the other. So let's listen to her. I'm doing a clip of her video today. You can watch the whole thing. I'll send you the link.
It is literally neurobiologically impossible to think about things deeply or to remember things about which you've had no emotion. I'm going to show you next a picture of the human brain in an inspired learning state. And the orange dots, the orange spots that appear on this brain in a moment represent the places in a person's brain where there is statistically more blood flowing, reliably more neural activity and firing when people are learning information that they find inspirational, that they're telling us in the moment makes them deeply reflective about what it means, about who they are, and about how they're going to use that information in the future, as compared to when they're learning things that don't feel inspirational to them, that feel sort of detached and not that relevant or not that important. And what I want you to notice is that not only are there massive orange activations, huge areas and swaths of activation up at the level of the cortex, all this folded up stuff at the top that we're so proud of having so much more of than apes, right? But that actually inspired learning activates all the way to the bottom of the field of view of our scanner. If you look in the middle of this image, there's a kind of a white stalk that heads down. That's your brain stem. That part of our brain we share with all vertebrates. Alligators have a gorgeous one of these, right? And we've thought over time that inspired learning is involving only these high-level, complex networks for thinking about and deliberating on information. But in fact, what happens is that the outcome of those deliberations is literally feeding itself down all the way into the brainstem mechanisms that keep you alive. Those regions in the middle of that brainstem and all the way to the bottom control things like consciousness. Like literally, if you damage them, you get coma. And at the very bottom, that orange spot at the very bottom in what we call the medulla is just above that little thread of spinal cord. If you get damage there, we cannot even keep you alive on life support. Your heart stops beating, you stop breathing, and your physiology becomes completely dysregulated. Think how powerfully this image speaks to the need to engage kids in a personal, emotional, deeply relevant, culturally situated way in their learning experiences. From the very beginning of our lives, we learn in cultural and emotional and socially subjective ways. We situate ourselves inside of relationships, and those relationships are nested inside of bigger and bigger spheres of relationships that organize and influence the way in which we think and learn. We need to take our emotions and our relationships and our social situatedness extremely seriously if we want to actually build schools that support all children in learning optimally and in growing their brains optimally so that they're capable of thinking well into the future. Thank you.
I've seen that clip, I can't tell you how many times, and I find it inspirational every single time, right? To be thinking about, and I gave this talk one time to a student board of education in Ohio, and one of the students came up to me after, and she was like, Miss Livesey, I think I felt that in my brainstem. It was like, gave her new language for talking about how powerfully she felt the learning that was happening. which I just found very, very inspirational. Leave it to an adolescent to be able to describe work like that, right? If you haven't been following Mary Helen Imordino Yang's most recent research, there we go, on the developing adolescent, it's fascinating. Everything about transcendent thinking and what we can learn from adolescents, amazing. I really love this takeaway from that video, which is that we need to take our emotions and our relationships and our social situatedness extremely seriously if we want to actually build schools that support all children in learning optimally. Just think about the work that you all do in making sure that the adults that are serving your students have everything they need to be able to show up in this way of being able to build relationships with students and to honor those, right? Not to see them as nice to haves, but to understand how they are setting students up to be the very best agents of their own lives. Okay, let's move into a little bit of coherence now that we got a little bit of science under our belts. Actually, no, sorry, I don't have my slide deck in front of me. This is a reflection moment. All right, think back now, minutes ago, when you watched the video about Jordan and his school experience. This is my transition. What part of his day would be the most impacted by the work you lead? When you think about him going through his day, getting on his bus, coming through the door, getting his breakfast, etc. Think about what you do, where you sit, that impacts his day. You could even write it down if you wanted to with like little bubbles, right? Here's little Jordan. Who's closest to Jordan? Who was the person supporting the person who was supporting Jordan? Who was the person, right? My point here is just to remind you that, and you know this very strongly, but sometimes we can forget sitting where we do. The decisions that you make every day for the support that you are providing the districts and the schools that you work with impact the students. And hopefully it's impacting the students in a really positive way. And it probably is. Okay. Now my question for you is, as we move into this next section, how might we leverage the science that we just quickly reviewed to support the systems of support that we work to create and maintain in our schools? So that's the frame I want you to have right now. I'm going to introduce you to a publication that I worked on with Katie Brackenridge. That's coming up next, where we looked at all of the, so I'm going back to the guiding principles for equitable whole child design, pulling those out. All of this little pull-out box. These 5 things create positive learning conditions for students. And so Katie Brackenridge, who you may know, she's often on the Monday call, along with a couple of other folks at the Center for Whole Child Education, spent 2 years on a question that I think sits right at the center of your work. Let's go to the next slide. California has layered initiative on top of initiative, community schools, MTSS, PBIS, SEL, expanded learning, etc., the work you are doing with CYBHI, and all the people on the ground are feeling it, right? We often call it initiative fatigue. Are you actually asking me to pay attention to yet another thing? And so we had heard this so many times when we were showing up to try to help folks in contexts that we decided to research first, and then we wrote this paper with the generous support of the Stewart Foundation. Let me throw that out there. The purpose was to show that whole child practices, what they are, and how they create coherence across the California initiatives. Our hope was that educators would feel less overwhelmed and more aligned support from everybody else who was trying to support them. So the way we did this, next slide, is we reached out to all of the different leads of those different initiatives, and we asked them to take this self-assessment that is connected to the guiding principles for whole child design. So you'll see if you squint at this one, this is about positive developmental relationships. And these are just the first three little bullets that are underneath it. One of them is, for instance, the school has established personalizing structures that ensure that every student can be well known. All right. We had each of the initiative leads. Let's go next slide. Take this self-assessment and to say, in the initiative that I lead, I'm just for the sake of argument right now going to say community schools. I'm deeply embedded in the community school work. I know all the guiding principles. I know what the foundational documents are that we give people. I'm going to look at it and I'm going to say, if in our guidance, that practice is something that we explicitly say we support, we're going to put it all the way out at the end of the circle there. That's a primary practice. It could be a supporting practice. That means that it's complementary, mutually reinforcing. You may not be able to see those exact words in our guidance, but the sense of it is there, and we could point to sort of areas that are kind of mentioning that. Or we said, practice not addressed. So the way we decided to visualize this is if it's a primary practice, it goes all the way to the end. If it's a supporting practice, it goes to the middle. And if it's not addressed, it just is a dot in the middle. So now I'm going to show you what we discovered. Next slide. First one, positive developmental relationships. Across the bottom, you can see we call them the blobs. That's our colloquial term for what this is. You'll see what the initiative said, right, about all of these different practices in positive developmental relationships. And you will see that the only practice that everybody said that was mostly in their supporting and not touched at all was home visits. Otherwise, everything was covered. Next slide. We're just going to go through each of these. Environments filled with safety and belonging. I kind of like the way this one looks like a starfish, right? Next one. Rich experience, learning experiences, and knowledge development. Again, fully covered. Next one. Development of skills, habits, mindsets. Again, fully covered. Next one. Integrated supports. This one is the blobbiest, you'll notice. There's so much support around this one. It's like it was in the paint fight, what do they used to call it? Paintball, and it got hit the most times. Okay, next slide. So what the key takeaway here was that every single California initiative, and we also did this for secondary education, in which we added linked learning and dual enrollment, are supporting complementary and coherent whole child practices. Sometimes we call them different things, but when you are supporting SEL and the community school work and the Golden State Pathway work, what you are doing is you are covering all of those different whole child practices. So we imagine if we were able to better align our language and get out of the habit of always just talking about what our single initiative is, folks on the ground will feel more coherence and less overwhelm. Okay, next slide. If you want to read more about this, please shoot this. It lives on the Glenn Price Group website, and you can read both of these reports there. It also lives on our Center for Whole Child Education website. You can dig more into that if you would like to see more blobs. They're kind of fun. We're working on a subsequent report right now where we will be looking at places that read these reports and said, we're going to do something different and we're going to try to be more coherent. And we are telling their stories so that hopefully it will inspire more folks to think about this coherence across the state of California. Okay, next slide. So here's my initial question again. How might we leverage the science to support the systems of support we work to create and maintain in our schools? And how can we work with other initiatives to create more coherence as we're going out to support? our districts, our schools, our children. And that's it from me. And I think I came in under time. Woo! More time for you guys to be in your other breakouts. Please let me know if you want to talk about about coherence, about science, about redesign. I am affiliated with the Center for Whole Child Education. I also do extra consulting work. Please let me know if you'd like some support. Katie and I take this Coherence show on the road. You'll be able to see us at several upcoming conferences as well. And thank you very much for having me. And I forgot who I'm supposed to kick it to.
I
But
got
Patrick
it,
will help me.
Gretchen. Thank you
Yes.
so much for your wonderful presentation on whole child education and coherence.
Thanks, Caressa.
Definitely going to dig in a little bit more on that. So before we move on to framing our breakout room presentations, I'd like to thank our friends from the HCS and Caroline for joining us today. And this is a friendly reminder to hop off before we go into our breakout rooms. Okay, I promise we're going to go into a much needed break, but before we do so, I wanted to provide folks with a bit of framing on our breakout room presentations and the corresponding Q&As. We've been so lucky and honored to have some true leaders in the field join us today from their school districts, COEs, and we even have a site administrator in one room. So LEAs and COEs will co-present in each breakout session. Each COE will give a really brief framing of their county and then hand it over to the LEA for the majority of the presentation. The LEA will then present on the amazing work that they're doing in their local community. After each presentation, there will be an opportunity for a Q&A, and each of these rooms will be recorded because we know you don't want to miss a thing. So if you really want to join multiple rooms, we will be happy to share recordings of our breakout rooms at a later date. Okay, so next slide, please. Let's go through the slides briefly and talk about who is presenting in each breakout room to give you a sense of your options. Okay, let's start with breakout room number 1, which is Palm Springs USD and Riverside COE. They will be presenting on how they've used the MTSS model through CYBHI. They are also one of the top billers for school nurses under the fee schedule. Next slide, please. Our next breakout room is Palermo Union Elementary and Butte COE, and they will be presenting on a truly phenomenal approach to using a universal screener to support students and families on Tier 1 supports in a rural community. Next slide, please. Breakout room 3 will be Elk Grove USD and Sacramento COE, and they will be presenting on their transformational SEL or social emotional learning and Tier 1 supports offered in Elk Grove. They'll provide many concrete resources as well that you all can bring back to your LEAs after our COP today. Next slide, please. For breakout room 4, we have Colton Joint USD and San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools, and they will be presenting on implementing the fee schedule through wellness centers at secondary schools. They'll go over many tools that they've offered to their staff to support them on engaging with the CYBHI fee schedule. And last but not least, we have breakout room number 5, with Ontario-Montclair USD and San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools. And they will present on concrete ways they've become one of the top billers for the fee schedule through billing Tier 1 services. They'll show us how they're thinking about medical necessity and how they used an innovative approach in collecting insurance information and consents to get to a 50% collection rate. So during your break, we will have the breakout room presentations options up on our screen, so you can continue to think about which breakout room you may want to join. Next slide, please. And with that, we move into our break. We hope you enjoyed the Sounds of Beautiful Day by U2, and this was suggested by Gretchen. All right, we'll see you back in 5 minutes. Welcome back, folks. I hope you had the chance to stretch your legs, even for just a little bit, grab some water before we go into what I would say my favorite part of every COP, which is our breakout rooms. So we are now in the peer learning discussion portion of our community of practice. And on our screen, you will see a description of our 5 breakout rooms. In a moment, we will launch the rooms, and these rooms are going to be self-select. So you can go ahead and select the room that you are most interested in. And if you are, for some reason, having some difficulty joining your assigned room, just remain in the main room and we will be happy to assist you. And with that, we will now launch the breakout rooms, and I hope everyone enjoys their discussion.
Their incredible efforts firsthand during their site visits, right? We've been able to, they've been so gracious and welcoming and making sure that we're able to see the fruits of their labor. They're very thoughtful in their tiered system of support, and being able to see that really come to life is so valuable to our RCOE team here as well. So today they'll be sharing some more about their experiences with billing and how they've been able to build those systems of care. And really what sits at the heart of it all, and you will see that today, is their incredible leadership, their teamwork, and their collaboration. They've also been so intentional about weaving together their systemic SEL, those universal supports. And one of the things I think is such a strength for this district is how they're able to braid all the different funding streams. That's really strategic. It's so created, but at the end of it all, it's student-centered. And we're just so excited and lucky to have them as leaders in our county. They're always willing to share with other LEAs. They always welcome anyone and everyone who would like to see their wellness centers, and then share out their information through other venues of our office hours that we have with all of our LEAs. And kind of last but not least, just a testament to their impact, they're one of just the 12 LEAs statewide that has been able to reimburse 100,000 and more, and Laura will show that today, so far through the CYBHI fee schedule. So we're just really fortunate to be in partnership with them. They are thoughtful, so committed in the work, and they collaborate so well with others in our county. And so I'm so honored to be able to introduce the Director of Student Services in Palm Springs Unified, Laura Musil.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Teresa, for those kind words. I'm Laura Musil. I'm the Executive Director of Student Services, and with me today, I have team members who are going to join me in presenting. I have my Director of Health Services, the other Laura, and my Director of Mental Health, Danielle Esquivel. And Lisa is off camera. She's our Director of Student Services. And Student Services, we like to say, is the right side of the pyramid. So Student Services covers everything that you would provide to a student outside of the academic realm. So we take care of health, mental health, well-being, SEL, counseling, special education, all the things. And so CYBHI has really helped us put all the things in the pyramid together. And so we're going to share a little bit about what we've been doing with you. Laura and I have been on the road show. We were at AXA. We did a presentation for superintendents about CYBHI. Then we recently went out to CASBO and did a presentation for the fiscal side of the house about how they can use CYBHI and grants strategically to fund behavioral health, because when we come up to budget cuts, the first things that get cut are the things away from the classroom, which end up being student services. And we never want that to happen. Hopefully you can see my screen. And it's a presentation. So I'm going to let Laura take it away. If I can, there we go.
All right. Thank you, Laura. So just a little bit about Palm Springs Unified. We are a district of about 19,000 students. We have 27 different school sites, serving over 500 square miles, 5 different cities. So we were part of cohort. I'm going to say we're lucky enough to be part of cohort 1. And what that meant was we've had a long learning journey where we have got to experience some of the ups and downs of developing this program. But we're proud to say that we were the 7th LEA to submit a claim for billing, and we're currently in the top 10 for reimbursements in the state. And then my personal, because I oversee all the health and nursing for the district, was we were the first district to submit a claim for nursing that was successful. So we're really proud of that.
I also wanted to mention too that 95% of our students are socioeconomically disadvantaged. So it's not what you think of when you think of Palm Springs, but we have a lot of students that are on Medicare and have a lot of high needs for housing. We have a high homeless population and a high English language learner population. And that's not always what you think about when you think of sunny Palm Springs and golf courses. And old people retirements.
We have that too, but we'll have the other side of it too. So when we started this process, we decided pretty quickly early out the gate that we needed to create a MTSS model for behavioral health. And we decided really quickly that we wanted to implement this MTSS model across all our school sites, because what we know in districts of our size is that often each school is its own little island and does its own thing, and we didn't want that for this process. We really wanted to create a consistent level of support that would be equally given across each of our school sites. And so we created a tiered system of support that every school site, and that was part of our condition as we rolled this out, was you're going to use this and this only, that every school across the district started using. We, through the process of trial and error, developed a referral protocol and procedures for that we use district-wide. Lots of trial and error with this. The check-in, check-out that we use today looks very different than what we used in the beginning, and that's just from growth of the pain, learning the pain points of the development of the program. We implemented the annual needs assessment with the mental health screener, and that was really helped us to gather data on students and where they were at. Were they more at a tier 1, or did we need to focus our efforts more on a tier 2 or tier 3 type of capacity? Additionally, I want to say shout out to RCOE. They really helped us with the capacity building for our staff by providing some of those staff trainings for us. Specifically, our wellness coaches have been participating in a multi-session training session where they're learning about how to develop and implement these new skills across the district. And then we launched a community outreach program where we really wanted to make parents and guardians aware of what this program was. So we did a lot of education around what is CYBHI, why are we asking for your insurance, how come we need your consent to do all these things, did you know that we did all these things on our campus? And many parents were just not even aware that all these amazing mental health and behavioral health services were even being delivered in the first place. And so it really just became an awareness campaign for parents to understand what we were doing on the campuses and why we were now asking for certain things. You want to move on to the next one, Laura? So here's our MTSS model. Tier 1 really focused on all those universal supports for all students. And this is where we implemented our wellness campaign, our Wellness Wednesdays. We developed the Wellness Ambassadors, and those are student-led groups. What we found was that students are the best people to talk to their peers about mental health. And sometimes they would recognize mental health diagnosis or mental health difficulties in a student, in their friend, before anybody else, any other adult would. And so they were really the best person to talk about that. And so that's been a really successful program. At the tier 2 level, that's where we developed the check-in, check-out systems and really just focused in on those at-risk students. And then at the tier 3, that's the higher level one-on-one crisis response systems for students that needed that extra level of support. And these are our swimming lanes. We affectionately refer to these as our swimming lanes. But what we did was we built out this, we stole this. If Santa Maria Bonita is in here, I just want to give kudos to you. We stole this from you. We borrowed, that's the model in education is we beg, borrow, and steal, right? And so, but we wanted to create a visual of what each practitioner could do at each of the tiers, and just to clarify. And so that's what this is it's just a guide in our for each of our practitioners to be able to see what do I do on a daily basis and where does that fall in that multi-tier system of support. And so this is part of our distribution that goes out when we're talking about this whole process and the MTSS process.
Thank you, Laura. This swimming lanes has evolved over time. When I first saw this a year and a half ago with Santa Maria Bonita, it didn't have anything to do with CYBHI, but I liked it so much. I thought, well, this would really help our team and our principals understand who they have on their campus and what they can do at each level. From there, it evolved into, well, let's put what can be billed for on here or reimbursed for. So we then edited it to be specific to what you can file a claim for and get reimbursed for. Our prevention specialists are certified drug and alcohol counselors, most of them. So I just want to make that notation because prevention specialist is not a position that you can bill for, but it's something we have on our campuses and they work with our substance abuse. So if they happen to be a certified drug and alcohol counselor, that allows them to bill. So, but for purposes of today, the number is the number of people that we employ in the district under that classification. And this amount of people minus the school counselors, because not all of our school counselors are billing, we've billed $350,000 year to date since July 1st with this amount of people. I like to share that because it gives districts and people an idea of where are you going to break even. Is this going to employ all, 172 of them? No, but with the funding braiding that we do and other reimbursement models that we use and grants that we have, it's helping fund most of them. It's taking the pressure off of our general fund, which is a whole other talk I've done to CBOs. So this has evolved. They're going to share a document with you today that I made that actually has the practitioner, the codes, where you can bill it, what tier it bills at, things to consider, because they wanted me to put it all on this one page and I couldn't, but I made a 3-tab, really intense Excel spreadsheet with the caveat that we are not legal experts. We are not recommending anything. We don't verify that everything on that document is completely true, but it's the guidance we use with our own practitioners and providers. And they'll share it as a different document. So we wanted to take you through how students in our district access support. So a student may access at any tier. They can come in as a 3-tier crisis, they can come in as a targeted tier, or they can walk in and be a tier 1. So a student may be a tier 1 candidate. All students receive SEL lessons in the classroom via counselors. That is not reimbursable right now under the state. But we do it anyways because it's a best practice. So our counselors go in, they do SEL lessons with students, and we also have a screener that we use for all students in grades 5 through 12. And what comes out of that is there might be a student that needs a tier 2 or a tier 3 service. When the counselors go into the classrooms to do lessons, the student may stop the counselor and say, hey, I really need to talk more about anxiety or classroom stress, and that will lead into a tier 2. Our screener, Danielle will share a little bit more with you about our screener and what we do with the screener and how we tier students out from the screener. Now, tier 2 is a little more targeted. This might be a student who refers themselves at secondary. A parent might call the school principal or a classroom teacher. A staff member may refer through an SST. This is someone who needs a little bit more support, and then we kind of want to find out what that supports might look like. This might look like a student walking into one of our wellness centers and working with our wellness coach to find out what services are available to them. And so we have wellness coaches that do a check-in. They do a short questionnaire with students to see how they're feeling, and Danielle will tell you a little bit more about that. And then at tier 3, we might have a student come in crisis to the wellness center. They might be in class having a crisis. It could be that a student has been identified on the screener needing tier 3 one-on-one services. A parent may ask for one-on-one services, and SST might elicit tier 3. So this is kind of the different pathways you could access supports at any of our schools. I wanted to take you through how a student might hit multiple people in a school day, and multiple people might file a claim for reimbursement on a student. So let's say a student seeks help. So we're going to have a secondary student who walks into one of our wellness centers. Our wellness centers are open all day on our secondary campuses as well as elementary. At a secondary school, you as a student can seek support at any time. At elementary, you have to go through your classroom teacher or the principal to access the wellness centers. So we're going to have a student come into the wellness center asking for support. That wellness coach is going to do a brief screener. We ask a few questions to determine what is the level of need that the student has. Is there an area of need that the student has? And then who would be the best person to support that student in what they need? So we have a quick little screener that we've developed for the student. The wellness coach will identify what the need is. And in this case, the screener is showing that the student is having a lot of anxiety about school right now related to grades, CASP testing, end of the year. So the wellness coach says, you know what, it sounds like something you might want to talk with one of our counselors for. And the wellness coach refers that student to a counselor to do a check-in, check-out. Our counselors are located in the wellness centers or adjacent to the wellness centers so that students get that immediate support. So the counselor meets with the student. They notice that the student is having more anxiety than a quick check-in, check-out, and the counselor feels like a broader team meeting is needed. So the counselor sets up an SST and invites the behavioral health team, we call them COST teams, and sets up a meeting with the parents. We hold a care coordination meeting. As an SST, the team determines that care coordination is needed and that the student would benefit from some one-on-one support with a therapist, and might also benefit from some social skills with a social worker. And so this example shows you how one student might go through all the tiers, and almost all of these things are reimbursable under the fee schedule for that student, dependent on the timing, how it's documented, and how it's coded. But this can just show you, this is a very quick snapshot of what the day could look like or a visit could look like for one of our students. The secret sauce, I call it, is all of our practitioners and providers are multi-funded. We don't fund anyone in student services 100% out of general fund or LCAP. We multi-fund everybody. We're constantly applying for grants. Any grant that's out there, we're applying for it. Teresa laughs at us because we're like, we'll sign up, volunteer us. We want to do it. Give us more money. Because what we do is we use the grants as our infrastructure. The grants start our programs. They help us build. They help us launch. And then we use the reimbursement model to sustain revenue and to cover our positions. We have been able to, in the last 3 years, bring in 15 million in grants. And we have another 9 million we do annually in reimbursements through LEA BOP, SMA, and CYBHI. Plus, we do have a specialty mental health contract with our county that brings in its own $1 million. So we use the grant funding and the reimbursement money, and we're able to sustain programs and people in a time of budget cuts. And so under CYBHI, when I checked last week, we had 6,557 claims year to date and about $350,000 in reimbursements. It could be higher if we had more insurance information. That's our biggest challenge, is getting insurance information. But we created a workaround and signed data sharing agreements with our Medi-Cal managed care plans, because 60% of our students participate in that. And so we're able to get the insurance information for our Medi-Cal students. And then we try to get the rest through parent outreach. we're fairly successful. I think we're missing about 5,000 students right now. And we just found out today that we might have an in with Kaiser, in which case we would be close to 80% of having 80% of our student insurance information. Just wanted to give you a snapshot. This is 1 week. This was last week. So wellness coaches submitted almost 14,000 in claims last week, or not last week, sorry, 2 weeks ago, because we were on spring break. So this is from 3 weeks ago. Our social workers, there are 6 social workers, and they did about 8,000. Our counselors are our newest group. So we're recently training elementary counselors and secondary counselors. So they're a work in progress. And then you can see there we have some school psychologists. Our nurses did about $2,500 in that 1 week. So that just gives you a snapshot. And then on the right-hand side, you can see that we have a lot of treatments, screeners, and assessments. Our biggest one is the 90832 treatment and the 90834 treatment. That's what most of our claims are for. And so that's going to be addressing some sort of school-related problem that a student is having. This is a report of our new EHR. We just recently switched EHR providers. And so we love that we can see by practitioner type and by codes. And so we wanted to also highlight what the capacity grant made possible and thank whoever made this happen. Thank you for making the capacity grant happen. We were able to hire a billing specialist whose job it is to look for the insurance, look for students with consent missing, to check on claims, make sure claims are going through. We were able to expand to 4 more wellness centers through the capacity grant through supplies and technology. We contracted with Daybreak Health for teletherapy. We have the option of students receiving teletherapy through our wellness centers or at home. Also paid for the mental health screener with the capacity grant. We used technology for the wellness centers. It helped with the SEL and wellness conferences for staff, and it helped us purchase not 1, but 2 electronic health records. As I shared, we're on our 2nd one after some trial and error. So I'm going to turn it over to Danielle, who's going to give you more about the clinical piece of what we do and how we do it.
Thank you, Laura. So a little bit about, we talked a lot about the tiers that we work under, but really what the foundation of some of our programs is our wellness centers. They really are the hub of support on a number of our campuses. Right now we have 11 wellness centers, and by the end of the year we'll be expanding to 15 wellness centers on campuses. And we have them on elementary, middle, and high school campuses, so all levels. A couple of things that really contributed to the development of our programs with these wellness centers is one is the recognition that mental health services are not one size fits all. Not every student needs an hour of therapy once a week. Some of our students just need some time to rest and reset and utilize some of the coping skills that they already have. Some of our students may need crisis care, and those are available for them at these wellness centers as well. And what it does is it really provides a less intimidating entryway into mental health services for our students. So they're friendly, they're inviting, they're warm, and it's a way to come, and it's a touch point to come to when a student has a need, whether it's a crisis need or just some time to rest and reset. And so these wellness centers have really provided that for us. The entryway into our wellness centers is our wellness coaches. They triage our students. They work with students. Students come in, they answer a few questions, and they give them, our wellness coaches can give them some guidance on what, they can connect them to a resource, connect them to a service provider, or just connect them to a mindfulness activity or something that helps them to rest and reset, and have some check-ins with them as well. They also coordinate our wellness ambassadors, which is our student group that does mental health outreach on campus. And our student groups and wellness coaches do our activities like our Wellness Wednesdays and other outreach during special weeks, during like Suicide Prevention Week or Mental Health Month, those kinds of things. Our wellness coaches come from a variety of different backgrounds. Some of them have lived experience. Some of them come from social work or mental health backgrounds. Some come from a school counseling background. And so they all bring some different unique perspectives to the work that they do with our students. Laura mentioned a little bit of our funding. They're funded through the HKI grant, capacity grant, and school-based health incentives. So again, we've braided different sources of funding together. And of course, our wellness coaches are fantastic at working different culturally relevant connections into the work that they do. For example, on one of their Wellness Wednesdays, towards the fall, they did a Dia de los Muertos theme, but also wove grief and loss into that as well, so that students were able to really work on some of those things, but also making some of those cultural connections. The next slide. Our next slide is just a little bit of what some of the activities that they do, some of our Wellness Wednesdays, some of our students, and what all of our different campuses have implemented at different points for our wellness centers. We've also been fortunate to work with Riverside County Office of Education on professional development. So we were able to participate in 4 different training opportunities. And what was fantastic about this is it brought together our wellness coaches, our mental health therapists, our graduate student interns, and our social workers, as well as some of our other support staff together for a lot of these, which really not only provided some education on the different topics that we had, but also helped to bolster some of our team building in our MTSS tiers.
Real briefly, Palm Springs, we have about 3 to 5 more minutes, but just want to kind of give you a little time check. Love this information. It's so cool.
Thank you. And then, of course, our mental health screener has been mentioned a couple of times. We provide this yearly to all of our middle and high schools. And we use this to essentially provide a needs assessment. We're identifying what our mental health needs are on campuses, both at the individual student level and at the global levels for planning needs as well. So you can see a little bit of some of those topics in that. And then, of course, we're able to track year over year what some of those trends are looking like as well, which is really helpful. So, and I will pass it back to Laura.
Thanks, Danielle. We have tracked schools with wellness centers versus schools without wellness centers to see if it made an impact on suspension or chronic absenteeism, which are our areas of accountability. And schools that have a wellness center on their campus, the suspension rate is 40% lower than a school without a wellness center. Chronic absenteeism increased by 3% if you have a wellness center. Students still have behavioral health access if they don't have a wellness center. It's just done through, they still have a wellness, they still have a counselor, they still have mental health, they still have social workers. But as a district, we improved to green in our suspension rate on the dashboard since implementing all of this behavioral wellness MTSS. One of our most notable accomplishments is our drug and alcohol suspensions were reduced by 40%, and 80% of students have not had a repeat offense because they have a mandatory 5-lesson interaction with our prevention specialists about choices they're making. And so before we had the behavioral health MTSS model, we served about 500 students with behavioral health. This year to date, we've served 13,290 students. And of that, we have been reimbursed for half of what we're doing. So amazing numbers for us there. And we learned that when we prioritize mental health, physical health, and well-being, our academics improve, students come to school, they're more engaged, behavior is reduced, attendance gets better, and we create these lifelong coping skills for our students. And so we're really thankful for CYBHI and all the opportunity it's brought for us. So I'm going to stop sharing. And that is our presentation. I know it's really fast. We normally do that presentation in an hour. So it was hard to cut out slides because we're like, oh, that one's so important. We have to talk about that.
Yeah, so I think I'll just give a little background on our county. I think most of you, some of you on here know a little bit about Butte, but we are up about northeast of Sacramento, just a little bit. Butte County's got about 200,000 people. So we have 14 districts. A lot of those are single school LEAs. We have probably 6 or 7 main districts that are a little larger. And we have everything from frontier schools and districts that are considered frontier to semi-urban. And Palermo is a district that I've worked with for a long time and is specifically Golden Hills and Caitlin and Rainbow I've known for a long time. And, I think you'll know this, every county has districts and schools within districts that you're like, why can't they just all be like this? And usually they have stuff in common, right? And I started my work doing trauma-informed work, and I started working with Christy Napoli as the principal of Golden Hills in 2016. And when you train on trauma, you learn very quickly. There's those folks who will nod their head and listen, and then you'll go to that school a year later and not a thing has changed. And you'll have other folks who nod their head and listen, and you can tell something's happening, and then you go 6 months later and a lot of things have changed and they've taken and run with it. So Golden Hills is a real gem in a very difficult area of our county. And I'm super excited that they get to present what I think is the key to an effective mental health and wellness system in education is the system. And the more that you have systems that make sense, are coherent, and everybody understands, actually, the more creativity and flexibility your providers have, your staff have, greater understanding your families have. So that is all I'm going to say. But that is Butte County. Of course, we are the epicenter of fires and wildfires, and that has played a large part in everything we do, including in Palermo. So take it away.
Thank you, Matt. Can you guys see my screen? I always get scared it's not going to go. Thank you very much. Okay. So quick introduction. I am Caitlin Webb. I have been in the Palermo School District for 16 years. I was a classroom teacher for 13 years. Most of those years were teaching fourth grade. I am a mom. I have 2 wonderful children. My daughter's in 2nd grade and my son's in 5th. And I actually just sent him away this morning for his 3-night overnight science camp with his class. So it's very exciting. I'm a little nervous, but I know he will have fun. So that's a little background of me. Rainbow.
Yeah, hi, I'm Rainbow Walker. I'm the school counselor at Golden Hills. I've been working in K-12 education for about 18 years. Been a school counselor for a lot of that time, started in the Bay Area, ended up at Placer County Office of Education as a PBIS coordinator, and been at Palermo for 12 years, and been primarily at Golden Hills for the last 6. So I have 2 kids. I have a 5-year-old who is in kindergarten at a Spanish immersion school in Chico, and my son who is 2, and a lot of fun and a lot of energy.
And I forgot to say what I do now. I am now our district's community school coordinator. So that is my new role. So a little bit about our district, Palermo Union Elementary School District. We are about 60 minutes north of Sacramento. The town of Palermo is only has a population of only about 5,000 people, and our district serves a little bit over 1,300 students. We are a TK through 8 district with 5 school sites. We have a TK through 3rd grade site. We have a 4-5 site, and then our middle school. We also have our community day site, and then a small Honcut site, which serves kindergarten through 3rd and has about 12 students in it currently. Our socioeconomically disadvantaged, we have about 82% of our students, a little over 10% of our students are English learners, and 1% foster youth. And then moving on specifically to Golden Hills, which is the site we're going to focus on today, is only a 4th and 5th grade site with about 274 students. a little bit over 84% socioeconomically disadvantaged, 12% EL, and 1.8% foster youth. We're really proud of our dashboard data this year. We are moving everything in the direction it needs to go. So still a lot of room to grow, but we're really excited to see it's headed in the right direction. So we received the Community Schools Implementation Grant in 2024, and we are taking the Community Schools Framework and delivering it through the MTSS model. So the Community Schools Framework is our what, taking that whole child approach and delivering it through multi-tiered systems of support. It's making sure that every student and family is going to get connected to services and supports that are appropriate for them. And then Rainbow.
Yes, so I wanted to just talk a little bit about our journey. In 2015, we started out with PBIS district-wide training. And then as you heard Matt talk a little bit about, our school has been really on board with trauma-informed practices, having Matt come in, as well as we did a book study on Help for Billy. Heather Forbes is the author to that. And we did that. I think we started that in 2016. We're also a PLC school. We've been doing MTSS for quite some time as well. So it's been a journey. But you can see as we've added different components, and there's been a lot of growth over time. I'm going to talk more about that as well on the next slide. Here's a little bit more detail into when we started each one of the components in that journey. Where you see team class, I'll talk a little bit more about our team class, which is an intervention class during our reading block for students who need more social emotional learning. We also have dived into restorative practices. We have Capturing Kids' Hearts as a district initiative as well. So there's lots of things that we've really spent a lot of time working on. There's also, we started that process with the ACEs training that really got us into the trauma-informed practices back in 2017. So it's really been a journey. We're always looking at our data to inform what we do next. And we have our PLC model has really helped us with that. We're a model school. Our teachers have time in their schedule once a week to meet and look at their data to inform their practices. So we're very data driven here. We also have a process with school-wide data as well as intervention and more targeted data that we're going to talk to you about in future slides as well. And so we're always looking at our data to inform what are we going to do next? What are our needs? What should we work on as a school? What should our focus be? So we look at the data to say, are we on track? Do we keep on route? Do we reroute? Do we detour? Do we carpool? What's the plan? What are we going to do on our journey, and how are we going to get there?
Yeah, so what we're going to focus on today is our integrated student supports that we have put in place. So this slide is just kind of showing you the big old list of everything we have put in place for our Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 supports. We are going to go into more detail about quite a few of these.
All right, so as you heard me mention, we are a PBIS school. And at Golden Hills, we have team expectations that stands for take responsibility, earn respect, and act safely and make a difference. So we are a team. And everything we do here is part of a team. We have team tickets as our acknowledgement system. We have a team store that our classrooms can check out to use their team tickets. We have a check and check out process called our team trackers. And I really want to say, when Gretchen was talking about relationship and she shared that every opportunity video, I really thought about this and how PBIS has and our trauma-informed practices really working together has helped us create those relationships. When we got into the trauma-informed practices, I think what we found is, like, we wanted that like quick fix it. Like, what do we need to do to be a trauma-informed school? And what we found is it was really about the connections and relationships and getting to know our students. And the PBIS piece has helped us so much with that as well, because we're always looking at how can we improve that? How can we connect with our students? So like for our team trackers, those are for students who need some additional targeted group intervention, some additional connection. And I'll talk more about how we implement that with our wellness coach as well. We do have behavior support plans to support students who need some more individualized supports. And right here, you'll see a picture of our behavior management process. We've been Platinum PBIS for 4 years, and it's just a process for us. Like, even though we've been scoring like 100% on our TFI, we always go, what can we do to improve? How can we make it better? So we're always looking to improve and get better. And I think having our structured teaming process helps with that as well, which we started with our PBIS work, and now we've moved it more into an MTSS process, and we'll talk more about that in future slides as well. We have a wellness center. So our wellness center opened up in October 2024, and it was really a dream, and I'm super excited that we have it. Our community schools grant helped with that. In our wellness center, we offer drop-ins for all students, and at the beginning of the school year, when we do our rotations on our team expectations around the school, every student comes by with their class to our wellness center. We introduce how they can use it, why they might use it, what types of things they would do in the wellness center. We have a beautiful reset space where students can come in and set a 10-minute timer and take some time to calm and reflect. We always ask, do you want to talk or take a reset? Because some students would like to talk it out. Some would like to spend some quiet time for themselves. We have a clothing closet. We have a food pantry. We have a student leadership advisory group that meets in there every week. We have lunch bunches, which is like a social time for students and where they work on social skills and friendship. We do breakfast club before school for that as well. All of our small group counseling happens in this space. Our parent-teacher group meets here. We have a lot of family resources, as well as that intervention class. We have an intervention class in our wellness room during our Eagle, which is our reading block, every single day. So our universal screener, we've been doing our universal screener. I feel like we started our universal screener when we started our trauma-informed practices, so quite some time ago. We use the SRSSIE, which looks at internalized and externalized behaviors. You know, the externalized behaviors we see, and with our intervention team that meets for PBIS, those are the students who we would talk about because we see it in our behavior data. But what we weren't seeing a lot of was our internalized behaviors. So our teachers take this 4 times a year. Our admin sets aside time during our staff meeting for the teachers to do this universal screener. It's free. It doesn't cost us anything. And then we use the data to build our interventions. So when our intervention team meets afterwards, we look at students who are not already, who might have shown up in that as needing tier 3 or tier 2 supports and aren't already receiving an intervention. And we build out our small group counseling using that data. We also use it as a way to look at how effective our small group counseling is. We use it to build out our lunch bunches, our breakfast clubs, as well as our check and check out intervention.
All right. We also use a program called Kelvin, where we push out a 6-question survey to all of our students, roughly about every 6 to 8 weeks. The questions and the Likert scale are also translated in Spanish. So I have listed on here our 6 questions that we ask our students, and it's really just measuring their sense of belonging when it comes to Golden Hills and whether they feel connected to the school, to peers, to adults. And then we also like to give them the option of sharing their favorite thing, which always gets very creative and fun. And the results will show a student's overall favorability, and then it will also show favorability based on each question as well. So when we get these results every 6 to 8 weeks, we bring them to staff at staff meetings, and we give them a classroom report so they're able to kind of look at their students who maybe are scoring a little bit low. We also have Rainbow, and our wellness coach will check in with every single student who is scoring 50% or lower, which is quite a task to take on every 6 to 8 weeks. They use this data to also help them with their lunch bunches, breakfast clubs, and their small groups. And something our admin has also started doing is they take these results and share it with our paraprofessionals, because a lot of times students don't feel connected to peers. And so out on the playground, we're able to kind of inform our paraprofessionals of students who might be struggling at the time, and then they're able to make that extra effort to make them feel like they belong.
All right, so you heard me mention we have a wellness coach. We've partnered with our County Office of Education, and they had a grant to help us with that. And so Elise Taylor is our wellness coach. We've had her for 2 years now, and she's amazing. We really appreciate her. And I think because we had some great structures in place, it was just so easy to find, to fit her in and go, here's what we need you to do. So some things she does at Tier 1 is she's in our wellness center with me. So her and I are in here, and I can't be available all the time, right? I've got meetings and so many things going on. So she helps to run our wellness center. She's here to help students with resets, as well as if they need to talk. She does a team recess, which is a structured game at recess during our snack recess every day. We were having students who were really struggling with that unstructured time and those social activities. And so she provides that. She greets her students in the morning. She stands out front. That was something I love to do, and I wanted to be out there all the time, but we have our meetings in the morning before school. And so she's that smiley face that greets the students every day. She also helps me with all of our classroom SEL lessons. So we use Ruler as our SEL curriculum. And I was doing all those lessons by myself, and trying to do all the things that a school counselor does. And so she helps me so I don't have to do all of those. For Tier 2, she coordinates our check and check out intervention. So she runs that whole thing. She checks in and out with all of our students who are on check and check out, as well as she's the one that's taken over our lunch bunches and created the breakfast clubs for us. So those are some interventions that she provides. All right, so I talked a little bit, I feel like I've talked so much about this, so I won't spend a bunch of time on this, but what I did want to make sure that just overarching, we use a lot of data to provide these interventions. You heard Caitlin talk about our Kelvin data that we look at. You heard me talk about our universal screener. We're always meeting and looking at that data and going, okay, what are the needs? How effective are they? And what else can we provide, or what else is needed? One of the new things that we are going to be implementing soon is a recess tracker. So our check and check out intervention shows us how students are doing in the classroom, support students in the classroom. We also want to provide that at recess so that they can get feedback and support on the playground as well. And then for CYBHI, we really just started. This is kind of new to us. We started in January. Some things that I wanted to make sure that I touched on was that we reformatted our consent forms. And I started small because you hear that I'm running a lot of groups. I usually run 6 to 8 groups every trimester. That's where I decided to go, because I see about 20, 25 kids during that time. And I thought, you know what, that's going to be the easiest for me to do. I start new groups in January. So I sent out those consent forms that way that included the billing, not just the consent for services. Next year, we're moving over to a new student information system. And so our hope is that we can make it an opt-out option through Aries. And that way, we already have that done. We can check that off. And once students get consent for they'll already have consent for intervention, so we can just start billing right away. I did just today, because I'm starting some new groups, I made a quick change to my consent form just based off of what happened last time to include insurance carrier, policy number, subscriber name, things like that, so that we had that in advance, and it just made it easier to look all that information up, so we could bill right away. But I would say the biggest lesson I've learned from that is start small, and it's okay because it's a process.
As Rainbow was mentioning, that we use data for everything. And then something we have started implementing is using a program called EduClimber. And this is something that is being used district-wide. And we are housing a lot of whole child data in here as well. So we obviously have our academic information in here, but we also keep our SST notes in here, our 504 forms. We have our SARB notes that we look at with the parents. And when we look with the parents, we're not just looking at their attendance rate. We're looking at their academics, any incidences they have. We also put our Kelvin information in here, so that overall favorability rate goes into EduClimber. So we're able to look, whether it's at a SARB or an SST, we're able to look and really get the whole picture and try to see what the best support is that the student might need. Are they not feeling like they belong? Are they getting into a little bit of mischief? Are they struggling academically? So it's all in one place that we're able to look, and it's going to start carrying all the way over from preschool. I just met with our preschool director today to get stuff in for our preschool students all the way through 8th grade, which is going to be some great vertical alignment we're going to have. And I just got a notification. We got like 2 minutes. We have been PBIS Platinum, like Rainbow said, and so we are very familiar with the PBIS meeting format, but we have kind of changed that into an MTSS team, and we are implementing more data. So we've expanded our team now. We're having grade level reps, our ed specialist, counselor, myself, our principal, a classified representative, and also trying to get our after school program representative as well. And this is all tier 1 focused. We are looking at our social emotional, our Kelvin survey, our incidences, our attendance, and then we've also selected some specific academic data that we want to look at. And we're looking at a tier 1 level, so whole school, and coming up with plans for that. And Rainbow, if you want to quickly address tier 2.
Yes, so we have an intervention team that meets every other week, and we actually have an attendance meeting. So on Tuesdays, we alternate. It's either intervention or attendance based on the week. Our intervention meeting is really for students who need support behaviorally, social, emotionally, academically, who are not responding to our tier 1 interventions, and we're always looking at our data. We have a PLC process that I talked about where teachers can also bring that up during their PLC meetings. So that's another data point that we look at during those meetings as well. Our attendance meeting, we look at students who are either struggling with attendance, and we look to see, have they improved, or are they still struggling, have more missed days, and what can we do to better support them?
Also, we're kind of in the midst of revamping our district-wide teaming structure, because a lot of the things we have put in place, we're attempting to kind of spread out district-wide. So every site currently is having those MTSS teams I mentioned, and we're really working on that feedback loop to make sure any information that is escalated to the next level is brought back to the place of origin. We have a DELT that has been established, which is our district executive leadership team. And through that work, we're addressing kind of barriers and challenges. And we've created a district-wide solution pathway for when barriers are discovered. What is the pathway in order for those barriers to be addressed and solved? And so on the left is kind of the pathway, and then on the right is our actual barrier log that we've just started to use. It's going to be a process, but it's going to be good. And I think a lot of things are going to be addressed through it. So, and then that is it. We went a little over, but, and there's our contact information. Christy was the site admin that unfortunately wasn't able to make it because of a pressing staff meeting she had to hold.
So I'll go ahead and we'll kick it over to, I believe, Beatrice, you're going to start us off.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. A lot of familiar faces, and so you get to hear some of this fun SCOE data or SCOE information. So if you don't know me, my name is Beatriz. I'm a director with School-Based Mental Health and Wellness. And in part of my role, I get to support the clinicians that we have placed throughout the county, but also in partnership with our districts and LEAs as they work towards implementing the fee schedule, and that includes everything from Tier 1 to Tier 3 services, and we'll hear a little bit more of that Tier 1 from Katie here. But just a little bit about SCOE and kind of what the landscape looks like here. So we support 13 school districts, makes up about 270,000 students. And that is a range of some districts that have about 300 students all the way up to nearly 65,000 students. So pretty wide range of population sizes, as well as being more suburban, more rural areas. About 66% across the county qualify for free and reduced lunch. And then again, that's a range of schools that have less than 10%, all the way up to those that have 98%. And so just a wide range of needs, wide range of current student and family status. And about 18% of our students meet our criteria for, as English language learners, and that includes a variety of different languages, including some of our refugee students who have made Sacramento County their home. And with that, you can see why we have to be really intentional about how we approach supporting students, whether we're going to be offering more intensive services for students or really hyper-focusing on that Tier 1 SEL services so that it can be applicable to our schools with 300 students all the way up to our Elk Groves with 65,000 students. And with that, it is my pleasure to pass the baton over to Katie Thomas. Elk Grove is one of the district partners who has, all of our district partners are amazing, but has worked, I would say, probably closest with us as we think about the fee schedule and piloting different initiatives and just sharing out strategies. And so really excited to be able to elevate Katie in this specific space and learn a little bit more about what Elk Grove is doing.
Thanks, Beatrice. Really appreciate that. As she said, I am currently the Behavioral Health Coordinator in Elk Grove Unified School District, which is the largest district up here in Northern California with near 65,000 students, plus or minus on any given day. And everything Beatrice just said is well represented here in Elk Grove. We have rural, suburban, we span about 330 square miles. We support a wide community, a large community of newcomers and immigrants. Lots of different languages. I think we represent over 100 here in the district, and just really excited to be able to share how we support that diversity and how we support mental health through SEL. I love being a part of the community of practice as it relates to CYBHI, but I've also been such a big fan of the community of practice of SEL as well. So much overlap there. And so we make sure a lot of our educational partners indicate that mental health is important to them on our various surveys, and mental health gets ranked high up there. And so we want to make sure that everyone understands that mental health starts with SEL. So if you would just drop something in the chat that lights you up as it relates to what brings you joy, what brings a smile to your face. For me, I have two creatures, I call them. They're both dogs, but they are feral dogs to be sure. A little wild and crazy, and trying to tame them brings me lots of joy. Throw it in the chat, what brings you joy? Laughter, for sure. Good medicine. Kids, I'll bet. Ooh, yes, good luck to Cole. That's exciting. All right, so we share in as many meetings as we can that SEL is just the beginning of the spectrum for mental health, as I mentioned, and I really make sure to help folks understand that it's not much different than what we provide our students for physical health, right? We start with PE, nutrition, health classes, That's been a common part of our practice in education for many, many years, and that leads to better physical health. Now, that doesn't mean that our students don't sometimes need to go see the doctor. It just means that they have a good base foundation. Same thing with social emotional learning. Our goal with that is to help our students develop the skills and strategies that they need to proactively maintain their mental health. And it doesn't mean they might not need to see a therapist every now and then, or a counselor, some other wellness provider, but we can give them a lot of skills to empower them to take good care of themselves. So here's how we do that in Elk Grove. In Elk Grove, we make sure that folks understand that CASEL is our guiding light and that there are 5 different core competencies. You guys probably are all well familiar with these. The way I describe it in 30 seconds or less is it's understanding myself and all the various components that go on, within my own head and body. And then what do I do with that information? It's understanding other people and the different things that might go on in their head and their body and what to do with that information so that I can have healthy relationships. And then it's putting all 4 of those things together to make decisions that acknowledge that my decisions impact not only myself, but those around me. And so trying to make the best decision for myself and for my community. So that's our guiding light for SEL. But we also really emphasize here in Elk Grove that SEL is 3 separate components. It's not just the direct instruction of a curriculum like Second Step or Character Strong, which are the 2 curricula we have here in Elk Grove, but almost more importantly, in my opinion, it's integrating social emotional learning into our instruction, as we started to hear from our keynote today. And it's also making sure we have a supportive educational environment. Learning is an incredibly vulnerable activity. It takes risks. And in order to feel comfortable engaging in that vulnerable activity and risk taking, I have to feel like you care about me and that the people around me care about me, right? And so we really look towards the California Department's education defined the conditions for thriving. So that's my next slide, is to say there's a lot of words on this slide, but these are 3 of California's conditions for thriving. And I just want you to throw in the chat what words stand out to you on this slide. And I'm going to change the way I'm sharing because I realize the way I'm doing it now isn't going to work forever. Belonging, absolutely. Yeah. What else stands out for you? I'm having trouble multitasking. Affirming, yes. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble getting it to go into slideshow. Give me a second. Is that working? Yeah? Awesome. All right, so these are the words that stood out to me: positive relationships, belonging, partnering, representative. And then those are a lot of words, so I just summarized it for you. 3 of the conditions for thriving are fostering positive relationships and belonging, cultivate, Brent, you have that word in the chat, partnerships with our students and families, and always ensure that our representative decision-making processes are in use so that we're teaching with our students rather than at them. These are the 3 other conditions for thriving. What stands out for you in this slide? Oh, I see affirming as well. Desiree, sorry for missing that. These are the 3 other conditions for thriving. Anything else stand out to you all here? Model and practice. Yes. I am still working hard on developing my own SEL, culturally informed, anti-racism. Thank you all so much. Yeah, so we are adopting affirming, elevating the voices. Thank you. Adopting affirming policies that cultivate advocacy. We have to help folks advocate because I cannot be the voice for everybody, right? I want to make sure that every different identity is represented, and certainly I don't represent all the different identities, so we can decrease adversity. We really see that diversity as a strength. Demonstrate self and social awareness. So modeling our own social emotional abilities. I think nothing more important an adult can do than apologize to kids for the mistakes that they've made. That's so important. And we elevate the voices of folks who have been previously marginalized. And then we model and practice T-cell as well. So, oops, I escaped and I did not mean to. You guys, this is not my technology day. Let me tell you that much. I'll try again. Are we back there? I can't see you anymore. I feel like it's been
You're
a
back.
million. I'm back with the
You're
right
back.
sharing and everything.
Yep.
Thank you. All right. So one way we make sure to integrate all SEL and really develop those conditions for thriving is to use Castle's 3 signature practices, which I imagine you guys are all well aware of. I'm a huge fan girl of making sure we start with an intentional inclusion so we recognize each other as human beings before we have to dive into that vulnerable thing called learning. And then we're about to go ahead and do the engaging, and then we go through with the engaging strategies, our brain breaks, our transitions, and finally we end with an intentional close. I haven't updated this slide since the language updated, but I want to make sure to talk about the intentionality behind those activities. So an welcoming or an optimistic, I'm sorry, a welcoming open is not just the same as an icebreaker. It's making sure that we're thinking about what is our lesson's purpose, what is our meeting's purpose. So if we're about to engage in some creative work or planning, our intentional welcome could include brainstorming or a question. If we're going to make a difficult decision as a team or as a class, we might ask to have people make choices at the very beginning of the day or the very beginning of the class period. And if we're going to be working in small groups, we want to do some relational activities, maybe in pairs or trios. Now, this can all be the same topic. For example, when I was creating this slide deck, I was thinking of different cereals. So if we were going to be doing, I must have been hungry. If we're going to be doing creative work or planning, we could just start with a little competition of list as many different cereals as you can think of. But if we're going to make a difficult decision, we might ask folks to make choices like, what's your favorite cereal? Is it Cocoa Puffs or Frosted Flakes, right? And then if we're talking about working in small groups, we might want to have folks share a memory that might be related to a cereal growing up. For example, when I used to visit my grandparents' home, they always made sure to have Fruit Loops because at the time that was my favorite cereal. So all the same topic, but kind of getting folks' brains prepared to work in different ways with that welcoming activity rather than having it just be another icebreaker. And then with our engagement strategies, with our brain breaks, with our transitions, we want to be purposeful about that too. We need to consider who our audience is and what foundational SEL skills they may or may not have. I think one of the biggest mistakes that can be made sometimes is asking little ones or adolescents even to work in groups, but not making sure they have the skills they need to work in groups, like providing sentence frames perhaps for disagreeing, or giving them cubes with different colors where they put their cube and their color in when they've made a statement so they can start to see if like, whoa, I'm taking up way too much time because it's all my color. And we want to make sure that we're not just always engaging in partner talk or group work, because we have some students who are more introverted and need that time to engage in self-reflection. So some of our engagement strategies need to be more quiet and internal to balance that the different needs our students have. And then of course we want to consider our group energy levels as well. Is it right after lunch and we want to bring their energy up? Is it right after recess when they're all a little bit chaotic and we want to bring their energy down? It really varies from moment to moment. So we want to make sure we're not always relying on these same engagement strategies and that we're being very intentional about those that we choose. And then our considerations for our intentional close is does it highlight an understanding from that day? Does it provide a sense of accomplishment for something that's being achieved that day? Or does it support forward thinking like, okay, we've gotten this far, but what is our next step? And maybe what do I want to start wrapping my head around there? So again, it's not just a bye, see you later, but a way to kind of tie a bow around the end of the day. So we use those wildly here in Elk Grove. Overuse is no such thing, right? Almost all meetings start and end in this way and have as many engagement strategies as possible, as well as class periods and class days. But Then when it comes to integrating SEL with our academics, we want to make sure we're interweaving all of our initiatives together, which is very similar to what our keynote speaker was talking about. So for SEL, we have the CASEL competencies, and in our district, we use PBIS, as many do. And then we have an instructional framework that really defines all all components of a high quality instruction. So this is, I just snapped this in a teacher's classroom. She did not know I was coming by. I happened to be joining a meeting that she was hosting, and I saw this on her wall, and I fell in love immediately with this strategy. It's her SEL greeting for the day is right up there. Her academic objective is there. And then her school rules are RED because they're the red cardinals. And she has a PBIS clear expectation for what it looks like in that lesson to be respectful, engaged, and dedicated. And I just appreciated the way she shared all three components of MTSS on one half of her board. And I don't think it probably took her more than 30 seconds to prepare in this way, which I really appreciated. Kids don't experience MTSS as three separate domains. They experience it one day, right? So in the morning, they might have that warm greeting. They hopefully will engage in some sort of student-to-student connection, like a community circle, and that's SEL, right? But then they go into their academics and they're practicing those SEL skills through engaging lessons and formative assessments that let them assess where they are. That's kind of PBIS, right? When we're assessing how we're doing because we know what's clearly expected of us. Then they go out to lunch recess. There's some more SEL happening there, either out on the blacktop, or our kiddos have a chance to go into a more structured environment called Lunch Bunch, where they get to do art and crafts or play games or something. And then more high quality education throughout the day. And then at dismissal, it's a goodbye, but it's also opportunities to engage in enrichment, like our extended day program, our extended learning, and or clubs. And that's also PBIS and SEL and academics all woven together, not three separate topics. So last but not least, our other initiative that we weave in here with SEL and PBIS into the MTSS domain is restorative practices, right? So when we started rolling out restorative practices in our district, there was a little bit of like, okay, one more thing I have to try. And we were like, no, absolutely not. Restorative practices and SEL are one and the same. SEL are the skills I need to engage in these restorative practices. And so this is how we've defined what's needed for restorative practices in our district. And you can see SEL show up here in our authentic relationships, in our ability to listen empathically and communicate our affective experience, engage in dialogue. And you can see SEL here, where we're engaging in community building, where voice and agency come into play. You saw those in the conditions for thriving, right? We can see SEL here, where there's more accountability for my mistakes and the harm that I might have caused. That takes a big chunk of SEL skills in order to be able to do that. In fact, when I started looking at this, whoops, I went too fast. But I was just kind of like, oh, SEL here, 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 here. And I wanted to fill up the slide with SEL, but I ran out of time for that. But you guys see the point. It's the same thing with different focuses, if you will. And so when we're talking to our Board of Education and when we're talking to the people who are a little bit less willing to see the need for SEL to become an engaged learner, we always make sure we bring it back to research. So this, I'm sure, is a work you're familiar with. It's the meta-analysis was done that shows that when there's SEL instruction, we have better attitudes, better behavior, and better academic achievement. But we've also shown that that data is replicated here in Elk Grove. So we're really lucky to have a robust research department. And what they did is they took a look. We have a definition for what it looks like to be doing SEL at a high quality level, including teaching the curriculum we've provided, but also including integrating it into their work. And we take a look at student feedback. Do they know that they're cared about? Do they recognize that their teachers let them talk about their feelings? So we have a whole robust way of measuring how well a school is implementing SEL. And then our research evaluation department took that and compared it to our academic achievement data, our suspension rate data, and our rates of student reporting they feel connected and belonging. And we saw favorable outcomes in all three areas. And so that was really exciting to see, like, hey, that meta-analysis is occurring in real life here in Elk Grove Unified. And so all of that is tier one, but of course, sometimes, like I said, our kiddos need some additional support. We can provide them with all the skills available, but every now and then life is hard and folks need a little support. But when we notice that students aren't thriving, the first thing we want to do is what we call a tier one review. And so that's taking a look at what's being provided at that very base level and asking ourselves, is there anything else we can and should be doing differently at that level, right? And those conversations happen in a variety of ways across our site. One of the challenges with Elk Grove is our 68 different school sites have 68 different ways they like to do things. So what we talk about is what needs to be tight and what can be loose. So what is tight is that you have some sort of tier one review. What is loose is who you choose to run that with. So some of our schools do beginning of the year meetings they call co-op casts, where they look at all the beginning of the year data, teachers' initial experiences with students. So sometimes that's the tier one review. Sometimes it's just a conference with the site admin, like, hey, I'm struggling with this kiddo and here's what I've tried, and any other thoughts about what might work. And that could be with your admin or it could be with your wellness provider as well. We do a lot of coaching here in Elk Grove as it relates to our mental health therapists, our school counselors, our behavior support specialists. And so we ask, are we implementing these interventions with fidelity and to the fullest extent possible? And if so, are there any other interventions that we might consider trying? And we always want to make sure that we are incorporating the parent and guardian in that conversation, because they see a perspective that we don't, and they're really the expert in their child, right? So we want to make sure, what do you think about how this is working or not working, or what else your child might respond to? And we help parents understand that the reason we're looking at that is not because we want to deny services. Sometimes that perception can come across, but because we want to keep them in the most typical environment possible as often as possible, to empower them to be a part of the learning experience with their peers, right? And so we want to make sure we've tried everything at that level. And if we have that conversation, one result might be, hey, there's a few other things you might try. And we have a wide range of things that people can try. We have a checklist of tier one interventions. And Mary, I don't know if you have those links, but if you would drop that one in the chat, I would appreciate it. And I also neglected earlier to mention that as it relates to the conditions for thriving, our social emotional steering committee created a guidance document on how to create those conditions for thriving in the classroom. So everyone has access to a wide range of strategies that they can try to create those conditions for thriving, and then an additional checklist for all the different tier one strategies that might be used in the classroom. So thanks for sharing those. They should be accessible to all people with the link. If I've done my technology right. So these are just some examples of additional tier one strategies that we might try. And we really make sure our teachers understand that strategies need to be matched to the need of the child, right? So for example, someone who is acting up in class, if we give them a break pass and they're seeking attention and then we're kicking them out of the class basically by giving them this break pass, it's probably not going to work for that kiddo. It's not what they need isn't timeout. What they need is attention. So we want to make sure instead maybe to work on this 5-to-1. Whereas other kids do need a little bit of quiet time or even like some physical movement around, walk around the pod or something like that. So we really want to consider what the student's need is before we just randomly apply an additional tier one strategy. So we talk about that a lot as well. And last but not least, if we feel like we have tried all the potential tier one strategies available to us and we don't have any further ideas, that's when we're going to submit a referral to our tier two team is what we call it. I know a lot of districts call it a cost team. And so that team is the multidisciplinary team with a different lens of expertise from various types of thinking, behavior, mental health, psychology, an administrator, a teacher, et cetera, at the table, taking a look at what has been tried and then starting to consider a more intensive intervention for the student, whether it be maybe group counseling or individual counseling, a behavior intervention plan, check in, check out, those kind of things. And so then we also want to include the parents in that conversation too, of course. A lot of those interventions require consent, but more importantly, we want the parents to be part of the design process for those interventions. And the way we help our staff do all of that, because it sounds simple sometimes when you say it out loud in that way, but it's really not, is we support them with tons of professional development. We're, again, lucky to have a large department in our district dedicated to professional development, funded a lot through Title II. And we also, over the last couple of years, have used what's called an educator equity grant. And so always there's a grant opportunities out there, I feel like, for professional development. The access to curriculum is funded through our general fund, and then our wellness providers have a wide variety of funding sources. But like I said, they do a ton of coaching in addition to actually providing interventions at their sites, and that was the Learning Block Recovery Grant, which was, of course, a continuation of ESSER. We use Title I funding for that. We even use some special education funding because we're able to show the preventative nature of this work to keep students at that Tier 1 and Tier 2 level rather than moving into more intensive supports. And then very soon we'll use CYBHI to fund some of that as well. So last but not least, I just wanted to share sometimes when we're telling the board that we need the money for these reasons, one of the things I like to do is look on EdJoin or LinkedIn at the various jobs around and what our current employers are looking for. Our motto in Elk Grove, probably similar to something other districts have, is that we want students to be every student is learning in every classroom every day so they can be college, career, and life ready. And life ready includes being ready for our jobs as well. So, if you take a look at Indeed, you will find SEL all over it. And so the board always really likes this to see, like, we are preparing our students to be career ready by engaging in social emotional learning. So that's it as far as my presentation. I will stop sharing.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me.
Yes.
All right. My name is Martha Smith. I have the awesome privilege of serving here at the San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools as one of the coordinators here. We are a very small team here with SBCSS. We are the Healthy SBCSS Department in the Innovation and Engagement branch, and we're excited to be able to do this work along with several of our LEAs. We are a pretty large county. We are approximately around 20,000 square miles, and we are comprised of about 24 cities. And so we are a very diverse community here in San Bernardino, and that community also is reflected in our population. And so we have quite a large population with a large population of our students being Latino. For our school districts, we have a total enrollment of a little shy of 400,000 students, and we are comprised of 33 public schools and 53 charters. And so in total, we have about 551 public school sites. And so of our districts, around 59 of our LEAs are participating in the capacity grant or were recipients of funds from the capacity grant, and 50 of those LEAs currently are members of one of the cohorts from cohort 1 to 6. And so starting with cohort 1, we have about 2 LEAs in cohort 1 and ranging all the way to cohort 6, where we have approximately 4 LEAs in cohort 6, with a lot of our LEAs participating between cohort 4 and cohort number 5. Here at San Bernardino County, we are very intentional about the technical support that we are able to provide for our LEAs, and Antonio will talk a little bit about that within his presentation. But monthly, we host our office hours where our capacity grant participants are able to be together, and we're able to talk about best practices. And then quarterly, we hold our community of practice, and within our community of practice time, we're really able to leverage some of the best practices that are happening throughout our counties. And LEAs such as Antonio and Kara have had the opportunity to present at those communities of practice. One of the things that we are very intentional about is making sure we are spending individual time with our LEAs. And so we do have the opportunity for our program coordinator, Veronica, along with our specialists to really have time with our LEAs as they begin to implement the fee schedule. And so we continue to provide this ongoing support. We support our LEAs in a way that was super important. We were able to get together and source a AHR. So we do use Healthy Campus for maybe half of our LEAs are using Healthy Campus. And again, Antonio will kind of talk about how he has used Healthy Campus as the AHR for his program. And then we're able to facilitate within the county the San Bernardino Behavioral Health Network that really supports this work and looking to provide an MTSS toolkit that is in development to support our LEAs. And so I'm going to pass it over to Antonio. He is going to share his screen with us this afternoon and talk about the amazing work that they're doing in Colton Joint Unified. So Antonio, I'm passing it on over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. Can I just get a confirmation that my presentation is projecting? Awesome. Thank you so much. And good afternoon. It's a pleasure to share the information that I'm going to share with you all today. It's been quite a journey for our school district, but yet a tremendous opportunity for our school district to sustain and carry this work, continue this work, God willing, in the years to come. I've been in this school district as a director of behavioral mental health for the last 9 years. And ever since I came to this school district breakout session, but that is definitely a model program that I came from and I learned from and gave me a great foundation for the work that I am doing today. So big shout out to them as well, just because they've been very inspirational to the work that I'm doing. So I am here today to talk about my kind of journey into the fee schedule. I do want to be very clear and just be upfront that most of our billing in the fee schedule has been centered around our wellness centers. So I'm going to be talking a lot about the work that we are doing in the wellness centers. When I get to that point, I will also be talking a little bit about our process as we get ready to bill for case management services, and also for our internship program for the new school year. So that is more of a work in progress. Again, just to be clear, the work that we are doing under the fee schedule is really centered around our wellness centers, walk-ins, and direct services that we are providing. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started. So I want to talk about our journey into the fee schedule, and our journey could not have started or would have been very challenging without the support of our county office. So I want to begin this presentation by just giving them that due respect. The capacity grant has been a game changer for us, has given us a lifeline really to establish systems, but really to be able to put the infrastructure in place so that we can do the work that we are doing and really to begin the process of the fee schedule. So one of the very first things that we did after receiving or after having been a recipient of after receiving the capacity grant in our planning process, and just to be clear, we're also part of the second cohort of the capacity of we're in the second cohort of CYBHI fee schedule. So one of the very first things that I needed to do, that I wanted to do, is to bring in our partners, bring in key players within our school district, bring in very key and important people within our organization to help them understand the fee schedule, right? The first step was to create some common language and understanding about the fee schedule, and to share the good news about this tremendous opportunity that was coming our way. And in one of those meetings, in the very first meeting that we had, it was very comforting and reassuring to have had our county office there present to be able to speak to this tremendous opportunity to our district leadership again, because I didn't want it to just be my idea, right? I wanted to make sure that our district saw the vision and saw the bigger picture. And certainly the presence of the county office was very important, very critical to the launching of our journey and to the fee schedule. So one of the first things that I did is this is actually a slide that I utilized when I presented to my district leadership in that very first meeting that we had. I wanted to paint the big picture, right? I think that numbers talk for school districts, obviously, as much as data, numbers talk, right? And so I wanted to show them the opportunity that was in front of us. Right. And so Dr. Smith talked about us being connected to Healthy Campus and that they are the EHR program or system that we are using. So we've had this relationship with this EHR company. Actually, prior to the EHR system itself, we were connected to this organization during COVID times in supporting our students through what was called COVID Clinic. So we've had a good relationship with them. In the initial kind of planning phases of them developing their EHR system, they developed this calculator. And it was a great and tremendous tool in that this calculator integrated all of the different procedure codes under the fee schedule, services, and also the rates, right? That with those corresponding services. And so what I did for my school district is that I listed all of the different positions, right? From our wellness center associates to our clinical therapist, to our mental health interns, elementary counselors, child welfare and attendance specialists, community liaisons. And at this point, we've also even included are going to be including our nurses in the fee schedule in the near future. But the bottom line is that I really wanted to show them the big picture, create this, establish this dream of what could be by talking about potential productivity, right? And I was very conservative when I created these calculations. I didn't want to over project. I just felt very responsible in my projections, and I needed to be conservative. At least that was my approach. So in this very conservative approach, I was able to show our district, here's what could be, right, in a productive school year. So if we really focus and do our part to implement this fee schedule, these are the potential outcomes, financial outcomes, right? Revenue outcomes for our different positions. And I really believe that, in my opinion at least, that in this presentation that I did, initial presentation to our school district, this was a very, very critical slide in getting buy-in from our district leadership. In that meeting, there were very important departments that were represented. Business department was critical in that meeting, right? Obviously, looking at the financial side of CYBHI schedule and implementation, they were one of the most critical key departments in this meeting. So we had some representatives from our business department. We had representatives from our IT, right? Because in the implementation phase of the EHR, they needed to be involved. They needed to understand, okay, how are we going to support the technical infrastructure, right? In order to launch the fee schedule, and most importantly, to set up our EHR system. Risk management was involved, right? Because of any potential liability, insurance coordination, as far as setting up contract with our EHR company. Student services, that's without saying. My department, the Department of Behavioral Mental Health is the name of my department. It falls under, in our district, falls under the student services. So obviously, representatives from our student services division were there, including myself, obviously. But we're there just because obviously this is an initiative that is meant to support student well-being and student success. And HR, very important that our HR department was included in this meeting. There's a lot of implications, right, in terms of people's positions and in terms of the impact on people's day-to-day. Who I didn't include in this meeting, but who was included in the process at a different time, were our unions. Very important that our unions are in the know. Now, I'm in a position where there hasn't been in implementing the fee schedule, I really started with a pilot with our wellness centers, and those staff are not union members in my school district, but our unions are ultimately still in the know because as we add positions to the fee schedule, there are going to be union positions that are going to be impacted. So the other thing that I did is in that very first meeting is that I laid out this timeline, right? I didn't want this to just be something that was going to be talked about in this one meeting and that it was going to create some excitement, but then ultimately it was just going to kind of land there, right? And then we would get stuck per se and not move forward. So I really wanted to create a sense of urgency at the time that I had this meeting. In establishing this very important timeline, most importantly, the launching, right, of the fee schedule for our program. So our targeted launching date was August of this last school year, but we actually were not ready to launch, mostly because of the having to set up our EHR system or platform. So we actually started in late October, early November is when we officially launched. But the bottom line is that it was very important that we that I created this timeline, and that we also, give timelines for the different departments to do their parts, right? To make sure that they were in the know of what was expected of them in order to be ready to launch the fee schedule. So just want to quickly do an overview of our program so that there's a little bit of context as I start going into the fee schedule and talking about how we've implemented it with our wellness centers. Just want to quickly paint the picture as far as our department, the department that I run, and the services that we provide. So in our district, we have a little over 18,000 students, and we have various schools, 18 elementary schools, 4 middle schools. We have 3 comprehensive high schools, continuation schools, 2 continuation schools, and an adult ed program. And we also have various preschools. So all of these students and all of these schools feed into our mental health program for both case management and for mental health supports. What is unique and interesting about our program is that it's all centralized. We go out and meet with students at the different school sites. The only thing that is centralized at a school site is a wellness center. But in terms of therapeutic services and case management supports, everything is centralized. So the referral process is all uniform, and we have centralized to the extent that we receive referrals from all school sites, right? So it's not like we have a representative at every school site. We have a headquarters or a central office, and all of the school sites feed into that central headquarters for their case management and mental health support. And as we receive referrals for mental health and case management, we have a team of licensed clinical therapists that go through this process of screening those services, right? Whether it's, or I should say referrals, to make sure that we are connecting students to the right level of care and connecting them to the right service. That may mean that we keep services in-house, that we provide services through our own internal supports, or that we refer out, right? At the end of the day, we are here to do what's best for students. And if it means that we have to find them a resource or connect them to a community organization or partner, then that's exactly what we will do for both case management and mental health needs and supports. This is just a snapshot of how our district supports the social and emotional well-being of students. Again, it's a collaborative effort. We have our mental health and case management programs. We have our wellness centers. We have a suicide prevention protocol. So one thing that we've done in our district is that we've standardized the way that we support students when they're feeling suicidal, right? So we all follow the same process, we follow the same protocol. And that's critical for the fee schedule, right? Because there is a standard way for documenting, but also for billing for suicidal or risk assessments that we do with students when they are suicidal or experiencing a mental health crisis. We have our school counselors, and we are eager to add our school counselors to the fee schedule. Again, we've piloted the fee schedule with our wellness centers, but I know that our school counselors, including our school nurses, are very much eager to join. But they are a very important very critical part of our SEL program in our school district, our school counselors, as are our nurses. They interface with students every single day that are struggling with mental health issues and needs. And that is the good reason why we as a district are going to be including them in the fee schedule. We have our community partners and we have MOUs established with various community mental health organizations and social service organizations, and they are very critical, very important to our efforts to support students. And then last but not least, we have a dedicated crisis team in our school district. Unfortunately, as many other school districts, we deal with loss, we deal with grief and loss, at least 2 to 3 times a year on average. There is maybe the loss of a student or a staff member. And so that is an important service, but one that we hope to capture under the fee schedule in the very near future. So in terms of case management support, our case management program is led by a licensed clinical social worker who is kind of the supervisor over that program, but it is mainly an internship program. And we have about 12 interns that participate in our case management program at a bachelor's level. And so looking into and what they do is linkage and referral, right? We are supporting students with their most basic of needs, providing advocacy and education and referrals to social resources and services and access to healthcare. Those are the things that we are doing as a program, and ultimately through a process of care coordination. So in terms of the fee schedule, again, I'm talking about the concept of the fee schedule here because we have not yet implemented, we have not yet added case management to the fee schedule, but we will be doing this in the very near future in the new school year. And as we do it, we will more than likely be implementing it with our interns and with our staff, our wellness center staff, because they technically provide case management support from time to time. So in terms of capturing medical necessity, right? At the end of the day, medical necessity is the how we as districts capture the necessity for students to receive supports based on a need, right? Based on a behavioral health condition or need. And so how we capture student need is through a lot of documentation. So what I'm sharing here are a couple of documents that we utilize: a client resource evaluation, right? And then also a case management screener that helps us to capture basic needs, right? To capture the need for services to be established for a student that we will ultimately be billing for under the fee schedule. So we are preparing ourselves. We've had this system in place, meaning we've had this evaluation, this resource evaluation. We've had these case management phone screenings. We've been doing this work for a long time. So it's going to be a pretty smooth transition into the fee schedule because we already have the documents in place. We just need to add these documents into the EHR system and begin the invoicing or billing process. And again, as we are adding our interns into the fee schedule, we will be adding them as either community health workers, right, or as wellness coaches. So that is the hope and the plan for the new school year. One thing that I wanted to share in terms of how you cover your basis for medical necessity, it all comes down to documentation. So as I said, right, the screeners, having proper tools to show that you are assessing the need for students so that you can show the necessity for students to receive support and services under the fee schedule to document that medical necessity. But another important document is your documentation of services that you provide. So in addition to the services, right, in addition to the screeners that show the need, obviously we're going to need to track, once you provide those services, you're going to want to track how you are supporting students. And in our system, we use a GURP note, right? Goals, interventions, response, and plan. And what's also important for the fee schedule is that for case management services, there has to be an emotional or behavioral health component, right? So for example, in the intervention documentation section of this GURP note, this is just a sample note, right, of how we support students. But I want you to notice what is in red. So the note reads, case management intern provided email referring party, notified her of case assignment. Case management intern contacted the client via phone to complete full screening in order to support the client and family's physical and emotional well-being. I just wanted to highlight that wording of the fact that as in case management services, there has to be a connection to that physical and emotional well-being, right? That is how we can justify medical necessity, is by documenting how those case management services are going to impact the emotional well-being of our students. So we plan on utilizing these specific procedure codes under the fee schedule, right? And there has to be a corresponding quote unquote diagnosis, which is really more of just a category under which we are going to be building. So for some of our students under the fee schedule and for case management services, these are the kinds of things that we are going to be supporting students with, right? And ultimately billing. Again, our practitioners are going to be associates, licensed staff, interns. And so ultimately, we're going to have a few different providers next school year billing under the fee schedule. Now I want to get into the actual billing that we're doing. So again, case management is more conceptual. That's something that we're working towards. And the most important takeaway from that is that we have systems in place, we have forms in place, and a way of documenting so that you are covered under the fee schedule. So now with respect to our wellness centers, and again, this is where right now we are capturing most of our billing. We started the school year, we started our billing, I should say, in late October, early November, as I mentioned earlier. And these are all of the different school sites that have an established wellness center. And these are all of the different providers that are currently billing in the fee schedule within our wellness centers, right? So we have wellness centers in our middle schools, high schools, and we have a couple of continuation schools, which are represented by Slover and Washington. And if you notice, they're all associate level clinicians, associate level social workers and associate level LPCCs, right? Professional counselors. And so this is our approach to the fee schedule, I'm sorry. So when students come into a wellness center, the way that we are capturing medical necessity is through this check-in process, right? So when students come into the wellness center, they are met at the door and they are taken through this check-in process where they are identifying first and foremost, we are, checking, making sure that we have insurance information and consents, that we are, and if we don't have them, that we're getting those consents from them, making sure that we have everything in place so that we can submit a successful invoice for that student. So consent to bill, consent for services needs to be in place, right? And obviously we need insurance information. So right now we are relying heavily on a relationship that we have with IEHP, in which case they provide us with a significant number of students with their insurance information. So that has really helped us to capture or already start billing with a number of students' insurance information. Again, in terms of medical necessity, though, we are documenting symptoms. So in our check-in process, we are asking students through a Google document, right, to establish their well-being or their baseline in terms of their emotional baseline or mental health baseline by identifying their presenting symptoms and concerns, right? There has to be a medical necessity to provide services. So when a student comes in, we want to know, how are you feeling? How are you coping with stress? How are you coping with anxiety? Are you experiencing depression? And we use other tools as well. We collect also information about students' readiness to learn. I think it's very critical, right, that in wellness centers that we are preparing students to learn. I think all wellness centers ultimately have that goal, right, which is to help students to be better prepared when they go back to their classrooms to be in a state of where they're more ready to learn. And so we do that by asking them readiness to learn before they come in. And then as they are going back into the classroom, we are asking them those very same questions, right? Have you seen are you feeling an improvement in your symptoms, and are you in a better state to learn? These are some additional tools that we utilize for medical necessity, right? To make sure that we are establishing that need for students, for us to submit claims on their behalf. So we use the GAD for anxiety. We use the PHQ-9 to gather symptoms of depression. And sadly, but very critically, we utilize the Columbia scale for those students that are suicidal, right? And I said it's a sad situation when a student is feeling that way, but it's a tremendous tool to help us establish a baseline for that student. In our school district, the way that we support students that are suicidal is by doing an initial intake, and then we lean heavily on our community partners, specifically the Community Crisis Response Team, to support that student. But that process where we are checking in with the student, where we are implementing the Columbia scale, the process where we are calling the Community Crisis Response Team, and the time that we are spending to facilitate that service or that process, we're capturing under the fee schedule, right? So it is very helpful to our program to utilize this tool and to document those interventions, because they definitely support our billing process. When a student comes into the wellness center, this is, again, documentation is key, right? So one thing is to capture symptoms. It's another thing to capture how that session manifested itself, right? So again, for both case management, mental health services, and for wellness center walk-ins, we utilize the same process. We use a GURP note, right? Goals, intervention, response, and plan. And so this is just an example, right, of how we document walk-in sessions to the wellness center. Just take note of how we're documenting symptoms, right? For interventions, we're just basically documenting the support that we're providing, the tool that we're using, and ultimately the support that we provided. In the response, we're just documenting what was the impact, right? Did we see some kind of an improvement for that student? And obviously, most of the time there is an improvement, right? Students that go into the wellness center, when they leave, at the very least, they're feeling better about themselves, or they're feeling a little bit more relaxed. And that is the ultimate goal of a wellness center. So these are some of the common codes that we utilize for the wellness center walk-ins, right? So when we were getting ready to implement the fee schedule, I created this crosswalk, right? And I wanted to make sure that I created some parameters around the services that we were going to bill for, and also the diagnoses and the codes that we were going to use, right? So these are all very appropriate codes for students that are walking into the wellness center. So if you notice, you see things like impulsivity or non-suicidal self-harm, nervousness, restlessness and agitation, unhappiness, inability and irritability and anger, low self-esteem. There's all these different codes, right, that help us to capture how a student is doing. But these are all very appropriate codes to utilize under the fee schedule. Again, in our wellness centers, right now, it's all associate level staff, but we are hoping to add, and we're not hoping, we're going to add, I should say. I'm going to claim it now because it's been a work in progress, but we will be adding our interns into the fee schedule for the new school year. This is an interesting slide just to kind of show you the revenue potential for a wellness center, right? Again, at any given time, you can have 15, 20, 30 students go into a wellness center technically on a given day, right? So there's a lot of traffic, at least in our wellness centers. They are very well established and they are highly trafficked and utilized by our students. So this just is an example of what a daily schedule of a wellness center associate looks like for our program and how we are capturing billing. So the day may begin, for example, with an individual therapy session, because in addition to walk-ins, our wellness center associates are also providing direct mental health therapeutic services. And that's the last thing that I'll talk about right now. I'm mostly just talking about walk-ins, but these are the different services that they are providing. They can technically do psychoeducation. They can provide groups. They may, at a given time, do a mental health assessment for therapeutic services. They may provide a crisis intervention for a student, right? And obviously, we have to build time for documentation throughout the day so that billing can actually take place. But in this example, you see a revenue potential here for an associate, right? And the revenue potential for the days that they work and ultimately for a school year. So there's a lot of potential for our wellness centers. Again, we haven't maximized our revenue potential yet because we are still in a situation where we don't have insurance information for a lot of our students. But we are working diligently to improve that so that when we start the new school year, we're going to be in a much, much better place. I'm an open book, and I can tell you that right now we're sitting at about 4 or 5% insurance information for our entire student body. And even with that, we've managed to capture a little over $120,000-$130,000 in revenue up until this point since November with regards to fee schedule billing. So it's a good place to be. It's a great start for us. It's obviously not where we need to be, but I'm just letting you know that even with limited health insurance information, it is a tremendous opportunity for our programs to help themselves. As I've mentioned, we also provide therapeutic services in the wellness centers, and it's limited, but it is a service that we provide. Was that my time? And
I don't know what that was, but you are at time.
Okay, great. I will wrap it up by just letting everyone know that we are also providing mental health services within our wellness centers. And we have the same systems in place. I think this right here is more common sense. I think people or school districts that are providing mental health supports, I think most of us are on the same page about having systems and documents in place and clinical documentation. But to me, this is the easiest thing to capture under the fee schedule. And it's the type of service that is most likely that is going to lead to a billable service, because in the initial assessment for mental health services, right, it is a perfect place to capture and gather insurance information. So I would say that the majority of the cases that we are supporting for mental health supports for therapy services, we have insurance information for most, if not almost all of those cases, because it's easier to gather insurance information at point of service, right? When you are meeting with that parent for the initial assessment, and we're able to ask and get that information. Again, these are all of the different things that we are billing for therapeutic services, from assessment to treatment planning to individual sessions to crisis management, even including discharge planning. So there's a lot of room and potential under the fee schedule to really support your programs if you're providing direct mental health services. I've developed a kind of a parameter around billing as well, in that because this is a more of a preventative program, I wanted to make sure that the services that we are billing are appropriate under the fee schedule. So I've created some parameters for billing, in which case we are only treating and supporting students with diagnoses that I think, under my professional purview, that are appropriate for the fee schedule. In other words, we don't have a specialty mental health program for our school district. So if we feel like a child has a disorder, a mental health need that is beyond our level of care, then that's where we lean on our community partners to provide those services and those supports. The last thing that I'll say about our program, our mental health program, is that, again, in the new school year, we are going to be adding our mental health interns. We have a pretty large program. We have a total of 50 interns in our program. And we are very, very excited to add, I would say, at least half of those students into the fee schedule, should they qualify as wellness coaches or as health workers in the new school year. So we're really hoping to see our revenue outcomes grow for the new school year with the addition of our interns, both case management and mental health.
I just want to give you guys a brief introduction to our behavioral health team here at SBCSS. We are small but mighty, and we use our specialists to really help us connect with our LEAs that are in the capacity grant. Let's see, are they advancing? Are they moving?
Put it on presentation mode, Veronica.
Presentation mode. Okay. So you can see this slide, right? Okay, the team. All right. So next slide is just the geographic makeup of our county. We are about 20,000 square miles long. We border Arizona and Nevada. We have 24 cities in our county. Our population is over 2 million, and 54% of our population in the county is Latino. I want to share a little bit about the districts and LEA demographics. We have almost 400,000 students enrolled in our county. We have 33 public schools, 53 charters, and a total of 591 LEAs represented in our county. So for the capacity grant participants, we have 27 districts. So we have 33 districts, and 27 of our districts are participating in this grant. We have 53 charter schools, and 29 are participating in the capacity grant. So that brings us to 59 LEAs that we are supporting with the capacity grant. We have had 2 additional LEAs join the fee schedule that are not participating in the capacity grant. So essentially we support a few more LEAs than what is represented here. This slide also demonstrates the breakdown of the LEAs in the various cohorts. So we have about 50 LEAs that are in one of the cohorts. And ironically, our LEAs that are in cohort 1 have yet to submit claims, but our 2, 3, and 4 are doing very well with the fee schedule. How our team supports our LEAs is through office hours. We try to bring in LEAs that are doing the work to kind of share some of their experiences, and we really facilitate those learning opportunities so that the LEAs can learn from each other. We facilitate individual meetings on site. I mean, if it comes to just helping LEA identify practitioners that can submit claims to the fee schedule, we help the LEAs do that. We help them obtain MPI numbers. Whatever they call us about and need assistance with, we assist them so that they can leverage the fee schedule. And some of our goals that we're working on with our funds that we receive is trying to develop an MTSS toolkit so that LEAs that are not in the fee schedule can use that as a manual, as a guide, so that they know how to move forward with this opportunity. In addition, we have LEAs, like I said earlier, that are not in the capacity grant, but they've joined the fee schedule, who now have lots of different questions. So this manual also serves those LEAs with those types of questions. As it was mentioned when we first started, we have 2 LEAs that are highlighted today, and I'm going to introduce Kara from OMSD, who will be speaking about Ontario-Montclair School District and how they are leveraging the fee schedule. So I'll turn it over to you, Kara, and I'll stop sharing.
Okay, thank you so much, Veronica, for that very warm intro. Hope everyone can see my slides okay. So I just wanted to share a little bit about how we have leveraged fee schedule. We are a very unique district. I believe we are the largest K-8 district in all of San Bernardino County. As a matter of fact, we're one of the largest in the state. I think we're coming in like third or fourth. We have over 18,000 kiddos, preschool through 8th grade only. And so we were the first successful school district in our county to actually successfully generate revenue through fee schedule. So kind of exciting. We didn't realize it at the time, but definitely excited to share what we have. So as she has shared, my name is Kara Molina. I'm the Executive Director of Health and Wellness Services. And so what we were able to do is build on some of the work we had been doing for some time. So something a little bit unique. These are all the things that I oversee. So not just fee schedule billing, but multiple things. Sometimes people will laugh like, wow, that list is really long. However, I do find it very powerful and useful that I have the opportunity to oversee all of these different areas, because how they braid and blend together as far as implementation also helps with some of the funding that we receive, where sometimes we get funded in isolation, where I'm able to come in and blend those things together. So I do have 106 staff members just in my department, and then we bring on 40 interns every year. And I oversee another 80 staff members that are directly at the sites. And there's actually another 30 unofficially that I'm supporting through fee schedule program. But we have been doing billing for quite a while. We do LEA, BOP, and SMA, just like a lot of the LEAs and counties do. But we also do something called EPSDT billing, or early periodic screening and diagnostic treatment. So that is something a little unique for an LEA to do. And so we were able to take all of that historical knowledge of billing for quite a few years and use that to leverage some quick implementation of fee schedule. We actually came in cohort number 2. So just wanted to give you context about how we kind of have our system set up. We do provide a multi-tiered system of support, and it doesn't matter if it's academics, behavior, social, emotional, physical intervention, but all of that is, we really pride ourselves in being able to really look at the whole child, not as a particular tier, but in various areas. Where does a particular student or family need support? And so we leverage all of that with having those individuals called a school outreach consultant who could have a PPS or a teacher credential. Those are the 80 folks at the school sites, plus another our classified version. They work in pairs, a classified and a certificated. And so they're the boots on the ground at the school sites, and then they interweave with us and my department and our community partners. So for ongoing collaboration to really provide the best supports for students based on need. And so wanted to share some of our site behavioral health services. These are the 2 individuals, the certificated on the left and the classified on the right, where again, they could have that PPS counselor credential, or as a teacher credential, they're certified wellness coaches. And then on the classified side, they are either certified wellness coaches, should they have the appropriate degree. And if not, we do have them as community health workers. So no matter what billing role they fit, they're able to bill for those services and really be able to have the opportunity to work with my department, work with their school teams to best support the student. So when we're looking at those student needs, we also provide services to families, and we also provide them to our staff as well. It's very exciting that we're able to do that. And so we, come together through a triage process and look at what is the need, and then we match that to the actual service, whether it be our inside service providers or any community partners that we have partnered with. The majority of our services are delivered in district. I'm really fortunate that I have licensed clinical staff in my department, in our school district. So on our family resource side, where we have a case management service team, I have 2 clinical supervisors that oversee 7 intervention specialists or case managers. And we also have additional university interns to give them extra support so that we're meeting that need. I also have on staff insurance enrollment specialists. So that really has helped with any of our uninsured students and families, so that they can actually walk step by step with them. We also have a transportation driver that is nothing to do with school transportation. That individual's sole purpose is to transport any family's students to medical or mental health services. when they're outside of, the school setting, particularly those that don't have transportation. So it's a really great service that we offer. And then again, we definitely comb the community every year to see what partners we have to continue those relationships and then establish any new additional community partners. And so all of that is at our Health and Wellness Services Center on Sultana Avenue. We have a full service resource center there that has all of these services available. Then on our mental health side, I have a couple of layers. Again, we always talk about layering and tiered supports to really match to need. I have a program manager and a clinical supervisor that oversee my licensed clinical therapists at our counseling center. And then I have 4 additional clinical supervisors that oversee the 40 university interns that we bring on every year. And so in that way, if they have Medi-Cal coverage, we're able to provide services through our licensed clinical therapists, billing through EPSDT that I had mentioned earlier. And then if they don't, or if they need lower tiered services, we can provide those services by the university interns. And then again, they're guided step by step by those 4 clinical supervisors. And then in some cases, there are some specialty services that we do refer out to our community partners. So we establish MOUs with those individual partners so that we can refer out a little bit more quickly. We're in a unique situation where the majority of our district is definitely in San Bernardino County, but we border LA County, and there is a tiny little sliver that is actually in LA County, but it belongs to our school district. And so sometimes, since we are in San Bernardino County and we service San Bernardino County Medi-Cal, we have some students, some families with LA County Medi-Cal. And so that's where it was really important to connect with those community partners if we were looking at licensed services. If we were looking at university intern services or behavioral health services from our school site staff, then that was okay. But if we really need that higher level of care, we wanted to be really clear about where those services needed to be provided. And then on our physical health services side, I do have all the nurses and health teams under my department as well. And so we're actually just about to start billing those services through fee schedule. We had been doing it for quite some time under LA-BOP, of course, like many of your school districts. But we do see where our health teams are providing quite a bit of behavioral health support that is separate than what would be billed through LA-BOP. And so really delineating those activities that are billed through LA-BOP versus what is billed through fee schedule. And so working with my health administrator to outline that for our staff. We do also partner with a community, a federally qualified health agency, which is Park Tree. They actually have dental and physical health services right on one of our campuses. And then something a little bit different in our district, we provide crisis response services. So many of the LEAs in our county, they do connect with the community crisis response team from our county, which we will connect with them when we suspect possible hospitalization. But to have an added layer before we need to contact that county team is I do have a team of 8 crisis responders that are able to support all of our entire community, whether it be individual or school or community-wide events. We've actually had quite a bit of trauma in our community over the past few years, like some really, really intense situations, student being shot at the park and almost not making it, fireworks going off where whole communities were impacted, lives were lost. Recently, there were fires in our area. Tragic fires, not any that were intentionally set. So our students are seeing quite a bit. And so being able to provide this service is, it's a great resource that we have. So I wanted to give you all of that back information about what our district looks like, just so that you can kind of see that build up into fee schedule. So it's all about relationships, right? I wish I could just say, I'm going to send home a permission slip to everyone and they're all going to sign it and they're going to send it back. But we all know that that's not quite what happens. I know they mentioned that we were at 50%. We're at 52%, a district with over 18,000 children. It takes us quite a while to get through even 1% where we celebrate all of that. But we did send home paper consents. On this presentation, everything is live, so everything is linked here. You'll be able to link to what our paper consent looks like. Not saying it's the only model, but it's our model. And so if there's anything you can glean from what I'm sharing today, feel free to borrow whatever you would like. But it was really helpful for us to get that principal support with that paper consent version because the families don't know me personally, right? Some do. I was a principal in this district, but a very small amount. And so needed our principals who are directly connected to their communities to be on board with that communication, as well as the site practitioners connection, the individuals that are actually delivering the services. It doesn't always, so our families don't always understand why they should be giving us this information, but those practitioners at the sites, even directly providing those services, they can have those conversations with our families. We also put it on Parent Square. For me, this was life-changing. I don't know if everyone knows about this, but if you build a form on Parent Square for any districts that are using that, it actually tracks the responses, and then I can send out reminders, and it only goes to the non-responsive families. So it was really great building that form because not only could I download specific consents from each family, each student, I could also provide those ongoing reminders, and then it actually creates a spreadsheet so you can see who's responded and who hasn't. So I thought that was really cool. A lot of districts that I share that with, they had no idea that it could do that. So and then we also build it into our SIS. For us, we use Q. So it's in a couple of places. We have it in our enrollment and re-enrollment process. We last year switched to all electronic enrollment. However, in our community, it's super important to still have paper for families that need that. So we do have it on both, on the paper and the electronic version. Our SIS also has a parent portal where they could complete the consent separately from the enrollment, re-enrollment process. And then for all of those things, we send out annual notifications so that our families are very well informed about what we're asking them to sign. And again, that is linked here for you. So this is the one I do wonder if I'll have some questions on this. This is what I'm hearing a lot of questions about, as do I. Recently, we did hear about Tier 1 services and not billing for all students for Tier 1 services. But regarding the guidance that we have to date, this is what our district has put in place. And so I do have 3 ORPs that are my staff members. And so they 3 came together and created this letter that establishes medical necessity for all of our students to receive Tier 1 services. And so for us, I do delineate our ORPs. One of them is specifically overseeing all of our PPS and our community health worker staff. Second one is overseeing our community, our certified wellness coaches and our community health worker interns. And then we have the third ORP is overseeing the rest of our community, our certified wellness coaches. So many acronyms, so sorry. And so for us, we did use that diagnosis code Z554. And then with our medical necessity letter that we have documented for all students, until we get different clarification or guidance, this is what our district has decided to utilize to establish that medical necessity. Again, I shared we have some pretty devastating events happening in just about every single one of our communities. I almost think we could all argue that no matter what our community looks like, whatever those social economic factors are, we still see quite a bit. And so if this is useful, hopefully you find value, but this is how we chose to move forward with that medical necessity. And then we also wanted to provide our practitioners with really clear guidance. So because we have been billing for so long, of course I'm going to build on our own experience. So our own experience is that we actually had a higher ability to generate revenue through both LEA, BOP, and SMA, and on our EPSDT side with in-house billers. So we didn't use a third party for that whatsoever. The reason is we had a negative experience with an audit with a vendor at one time, and that was just our experience. I'm sure it was a fluke, but we had to pay back millions of dollars. And so because of that, we actually only brought in in-house billers. Well, then fee schedule came on and we thought we knew everything, right? And so we hired in-house billers, which I still have, and they do definitely serve a purpose. But what we found with fee schedule is that it was taking so long to just submit claims, and my billers could not keep up with the rate at which we were receiving claims from our practitioners. So in January, we did shift to an electronic health record, and so we what my billing team is doing is they're really supporting the infrastructure of that to make sure we have as many clean claims as possible. And so for our billing side, we want them to pay attention to all the billing codes. And on our practitioner side, we don't want them to pay attention to billing codes. We want them to pay attention to services. And so since we had these individuals at our schools already, we mapped out what services they were providing and then also correlated that with billing codes. So what you see on the screen now is 2 examples of guides for our PPS and our certified wellness coaches as far as what those items, those activities are doing, and what Healthy Campus service templates they'll use in our EHR, which is Healthy Campus. On this slide deck, I did link the entire PPS guide for all 3 of our practitioner types, as well as a separate document, which are the examples when we were first hand entering those services to submit for claims. I think both work really well as like visuals, so that you can see how we mapped out activities connected with billable codes. But again, we wanted our billers to focus on billing codes, and we want our practitioners to focus on services. So hopefully you'll find that helpful. And so our billing team, again, what that looks like is I do have a lead medical billing technician, and that individual does take the lead on submitting claims. We do submit some additional claims outside of what Healthy Campus submits for us through behavioral health services. And again, that is because I shared we have a pretty comprehensive system of care with clinical staff. And so for our behavioral health services, our EHR is Healthy Campus, but for my clinical staff, we use MyEvolve as an electronic health record. And the reason why we have both is because those electronic health records for clinical services need to be definitely significantly more comprehensive than our behavioral health services from our PPS, CWC, and CHWs. And so though that billing team has a senior office assistant to support that work, to do all that prep work. And then their big focus is on that data integrity in both our SIS and in Healthy Campus, and then that direct billing pulling from MyEvolve. So that is what that in-house billing infrastructure looks like. With Healthy Campus, when we switched to January, from January till just today, April 14th, we were able to get 52% cleared to bill, so super exciting. We have over 98,000 claims. And then just all together since our launch in April, we have generated that we have received the revenue, not just what's submitted, but what has actually been received over 400,000 in revenue and added revenue. And the whole point is to continue those behavioral health services that we have in place. I do very much think that our revenue is going to skyrocket very soon. Part of the delay was getting all that infrastructure in place, but we're really set up. Just 2 weeks ago, we got a check by itself for 222,000, just 1 week's worth. So that was really cool to see that over time, going from that first generated revenue of probably $10 to now receiving, 6-digit revenue payments. So that is all I have. I should have done a better job at keeping time, but I did want to leave it open for questions. My email, my website, and our link tree that has all of our resources is also linked here on this slide.
Okay, looks like we've come to a nice settling group. Thank you again, an amazing breakout sessions. We're going to take a couple minutes to debrief through a wonderful activity. And in the chat, there'll be a link to the Padlet. The Padlet gives everyone the chance to take some time to answer these prompts on the Padlet. What is one connection between your breakout room presentation and our keynote presentation on the whole child framework? And please share a pitch for this breakout room and why your COE colleagues should go watch the recording of this session. The link to the Padlet is in the chat. And feel free to go ahead and click and answer these two questions.